What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another amazing Naruto Sotri. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description box to original creator of this beautiful creation. The mist was slowly receding back to the ocean waters as Zabuza slumped to his knees, Kiri having torn his right arm off. He smiled as he looked at the slumped form of his apprentice. It had taken 6 genin and a junin to finally knock him out. And even then the ice wielder had managed to knock out 4 of the genin and severely weaken the junin. As his blood flowed freely, staining the bridge red, the demon of the bloody mist idly wondered what hell would be like. His musings were interrupted by the sound of clapping. He looked along with everyone else on the bridge to see that irritating fat little slime laughing, surrounded by his mercenary guard, roughly 200 fighters. Zabuza narrowed his eyes at the sight of a dark-haired woman, the bridge builder's daughter if he remembered correctly, bound and gagged, held by a pair of samurai standing beside the vertically challenged mobster. It sickened the ex-Anbu. Killing someone was fine, that was just a job. But kidnapping his family? And Lord knows that woman wasn't destined anywhere pleasant, that was beyond even the so-called demon. The day had started so well. He woke up, had a delicious breakfast, read his favorite Icha, signed Golden Edition. It had gone swiftly downhill from that point. The second him and his team had left the house it started to rain, and not any rain either. It was coming down in sheets, nothing like the Konan were used to. Then the mist had rolled in. Kakashi didn't think it was possible to feel more wet, but apparently it was. Then Zabuza had attacked, along with that hunter nin. Kakashi had gotten why and told Asuma he should help the genin, that he would be enough for Zabuza, after all he was only an A-rank nin. The copy nin paused. He would have serious talks with the people who ranked missing nins. There was no way that oversized butcher knife-wielding freak was a measly a rank. It had drained Kakashi of all he had to beat the other masked fighter, and now as that fat little puke stood threatening Tsunami, Kakashi looked back and decided he should have just assassinated the little bastard when they got here. After all, the best defense is an aggressive offense. Oh well, hindsight's a bitch, ain't it? Gato was having fun. It wasn't often he got to stick to those damn know-it-all ninja. He grinned as he watched the ninja sweat it out. Today he was gonna get full control, finally, over a solid base of operations. He glanced over at the bound form of Tsunami and licked his lips. He'd be having celebratory fun with her tonight. Or so he thought anyways. As he was about to officially stamp this the best day ever and then proceed to order the mass slaughter of those oh so irritating ninjas, the surprised yelp of one of his samurai drew his attention. Where the form of his evening entertainment had been, now stood the rather imposing figure of a shinobi, if that glistening Kiri forehead protector meant anything. The man, he assumed, before him stood at about 5 feet 5 inches, the bottom half of his face covered in a newer AIM rebreather A.N. Same style Guzu wears, look it up, it's cool looking. Covering the rest of his body was a glistening navy cloak, his left hand edged out from the front wearing a clawed gauntlet, a common weapon in Kiri. On both the gauntlet and the back of his cloak a design of a 9-headed hydra, the serpentine heads coiled in a spiral. The figure tipped his blonde-colored head at Gato, making the older man gasp slightly. With the blonde locks brushed out of the way, a jagged scar running over the left eye was made visible. A sight that only served to enhance their piercing blue gaze. Getting over his surprise, Gato motioned with his hand and 5 of the mercenaries drove their swords into the man, who promptly disintegrated into a puddle of water. A raspy, almost mechanical-sounding laugh rang out behind the group, who whipped around to see the figure standing with the now unbound Tsunami at his side. He edged his head to the side again, in a display some would probably find endearing. Now then, what did my poor Mizu Bunshin ever do to you? All the while he spoke, the rebreather became very audible, adding to his unnerving appearance. A.N. Yeah, think Vader, only diff voice, same cool effect. His eyes glinted back into a harsh set, the brief mirth lost form the azure pools. You are Gato, yes? Of Gato Shipping Industries, yes? The tycoon narrowed his eyes. Yes, what is it to you? He ran through all the reasons this shinobi would show up in his head. None of the outcomes were looking particularly good. The figure looked as if he was contemplating something. My mission is your death. I had originally planned on it to be swift, but I cannot abide the mistreatment of women such as my lovely guest here. Tsunami blushed slightly as he gestured to her with his clawed hand. As such your demise, I am afraid, will be much more unique. Gato sneered, you're a fool if you think you can take on all my men, boy. Now if you apologize nicely I just might let you live. The blonde laughed at that, a really creepy, disturbing and eerily detached laugh. The ninja on the bridge had no idea whatsoever of what to make of this newcomer. Kakashi felt he looked familiar somehow. He looked over at the two still standing genin, Sakura and Ino, and he had the sneaking suspicious that was only because they had stuck by Tazuna the entire fight. He glanced over at his fellow Junin who despite being on his last dregs of chakra looked ready to jump into the fight if need be. Kakashi nodded almost imperceptibly, both would be ready to fight to the last, hopefully utilizing whatever distraction the blonde made as an escape for their students. What the copy nin, and the ex-fireguard for that matter, did not expect, was for the blonde to flash through 3 hand signs, ending with bird. Tendrils of water formed in the air, wrapping around the blonde as he went through his jutsu, gathering as he held the last seal. Not that anyone could see it, but the masked nin grinned, bearing oversized fangs. Sweden, Hydra Gale. 9 watery serpent-like heads formed from the water dancing around the Kiri shinobi. If one looked close enough they would see some scales and fangs made from ice. The blonde tipped his head and pointed out with his hands, his cloak parting slightly to reveal dark Enbu-style armor, and if you looked close enough, the glint of 2 forehead protectors tied to his arms. The draconic heads surged forward into the crowd of mercenaries, battering and slashing, with their frosty fangs, a path towards Gato. The blonde had his hands held out, his fingers twitching every so often, like puppet master directing a play. In a matter of minutes 200 wet and bloody corpses were all that was left of Gato's army, leaving only the fat man behind. The cloaked figure dropped his metal-glad hand leaving only his right hand, which was wearing a fingerless fighting glove, pointed at the businessman. Gato, by order of the Mizukage, you will die. Water again formed in the air, a small tendril of it forcing itself into Gato's open mouth. The masked figure slowly closed his fist. Ever wanted to know what it was like to drown on, relatively, dry land? Gato's eyes flew open as his glasses fell off. He dropped to ground, his face painted with mute horror, as he clawed at his throat trying to dislodge the water that was filling his lungs. The gathered shinobi discovered that a short, fat, physically challenged wannabe mobster could only hold his breath for 3 minutes. The shinobi released his clenched fist as his target dropped dead, water leaking from his mouth. The Konoha ninjas shuddered at the brutality of it all. Zabuza raised an eyebrow and was torn between taking this masked nin for a drink, or running screaming because he was from Kiri. Tazuna and Tsunami had merely watched on impassively. Both had seen things done at that man's orders that were unforgivable, they just wish he suffered more. Kakashi decided he should finally speak up. He slowly walked over to the Kiri shinobi. Thank you for your assistance, but I must ask your purpose in being here. The cloaked ninja looked at him like he was stupid. Did you miss the part where I stated my mission was to kill him? Kiri was uncomfortable with a criminal organization taking up such close residence to our borders. The water Daiwaimo hired us to deal with the problem. Do you have any other questions? I still have some business to attend to, he said, glancing at the forms of Zabuza and Haku. Kakashi followed his gaze and shuddered. Just what your name is, and how long you plan on staying here. You know, making sure you're not a threat to our mission. The blonde raised an eyebrow. I hardly think a 12-year-old genin is any threat to you. He snickered at that, but if you must call me by something. Hydra is what my peers refer to me as. Now, I would ask you to remove your charges and the civilians from the area. I have some business with those nuke nins and I quite imagine the lovely lady here has seen enough violence. Kakashi suppressed another shudder and went back to Asuma, Ino and Sakura. Together they picked up the 4 fallen genin, Sasuke, Sai, Choji and Shikamaru. Tazuna ran up to Tsunami making sure she was all right. As the Konoha nins joined with them they turned to leave. Leaf-san? Kakashi stopped and looked at the newly named Hydra. Yes? I do hope the next time we meet, it will be under more amicable circumstances. He said, curving his eyes into a smile. Much like the copy nin himself did. Said copy nin raised his visible eyebrow, and how do you know we will meet again? Why, are not the Chunin exams in Konoha this year? And if your team faced Zabuza and is somehow still alive, they must show some promise. I eagerly await to test them personally. He laughed again at that and turned his back, half waving with his clawed hand behind him. Kakashi paled at the thought of his genin facing that thing in the upcoming exams. He made a mental note to triple their training efforts. Hydra walked up to the fallen form of Haku, reached down and deftly and unceremoniously tossed the feminine boy over his shoulder. He looked over at Zabuza, the man having managed to get a makeshift stop for his severed arm using his facial bandages. The demon of the bloody mist looked at his assumed-to-be executioner and sighed, resigning himself to his fate. After all, he couldn't escape without his good arm, his sword arm, and Haku was definitely of no use in a fight at this point. He looked up as the blonde shinobi dropped his apprentice to the ground in front of him, before sitting down cross-legged himself, staring Zabuza in the eye. Zabuza twitched, "Goddammit, just kill us and get it over with." Hydra arched an eyebrow, "Now why would I do that? I have no desire to see you two die." Zabuza stared at him as Haku slowly awoke, probably from being dropped. Excuse me? You are a Kiri ninja, are you not?" Hydra waved his hand dismissively. "Bah, not a loyal one though." It was Zabuza's turn to arch an eyebrow. "You're a missing nin?" "No, not yet. I had need for kenjutsu training and more Suiden jutsu. That and a ticket to the upcoming genin exams. Kiri seemed like the best place. But make no mistake, I hold little love for it. Killing that slime of a cage is on my to-do list. Which brings me to you two," he said, pointing at them both. Haku had awoken by now and tensed up slightly. Zabuza leaned back. "You want us to help you assassinate the Mizukage?" Hydra shrugged. "No, the whole destroying mist thing is down a ways on my list. And I plan on doing it economically. No, first off, I need allies. I can't exactly fight much anymore, kid. But you can teach, yes?" Hydra said, clacking his claws together softly. "You want me to teach you?" Zabuza looked at him funny. "Yes, but more importantly, I'll be wanting you to teach future generations. See, I have plans to take over a certain country that has been oppressed by all of its leaders in the past 50 years. I plan on freeing it. But one cannot just swoop in, kill the leader and just take over. For one thing, the economic infrastructure sucks ass, as does the schooling and medical systems. So my plan is to have people to be able to take those positions and aid me in that regard." He ran his right hand through his hair, but again, this is all a ways down the road. Zabuza just stared. "So, you want me to eventually become a school teacher? Something like that? You look like you'd put the fear of Kami into a group of pissant students. Just what aspiring shinobi need. But like I said, don't worry about that for now. First, I'll be showcasing my abilities at the upcoming genin exams, and looking for those of skill. Not to mention the other 8, well, 8 at most. I'm not sure how many there are of us. I'll be starting a group, who at the proper time, will help me further my goals." Zabuza looked at Hydra, then at Haku, then back at Hydra. "That's a weird and borderline psychotic-sounding plan. Which makes it sound like fun." He grinned. "Though I must ask why you want to take over a country, and which one?" The blonde paused and thought, "To make a home for those like me. Those who people have looked on as less than human for matters out of our control. I'll be offering refuge to those with bloodlines who've been forced from their homes, and those like me, other Jinchuriki." Zabuza coughed at that. "You're a Jinchuriki? Well, damn." Hydra eyes smiled. "Indeed. We are not well liked or appreciated despite the fact this burden was forced onto us by others. I am making a home for all those unjustly hated, or those who are tired of being treated like worthless tools. Like him." He gestured behind them at the drowned corpse of Gato. As for what country? The entire time they were talking, Haku had been lost in wonder. It seemed like a dream to him that this seemingly perfect offer would come out of the blue. He stared at the blonde-haired shinobi. "Why are you offering this to us?" Hydra shrugged. "I've heard nothing but good things, well, in my opinion, of you two. You seemed like just the kind of people I need as partners. Who knows, maybe even friends one day. Besides, I've wanted to meet Zabuza ever since I was accepted as a genin." The swordsman looked at Hydra. "Oh, why is that?" "Well, it seems you and I both came upon the best way of skipping the academy." Zabuza paused at hearing that, then gave a predatory grin. "You mean you? Well, I didn't kill off the entire graduating class. Just maimed them. I think the lowest injury was a missing hand. It's kind of why I work alone. They called me the second coming of Zabuza. The Hydra of the bloody mist." Zabuza chuckled. I thought they changed the way they graduated? Oh, they did. I wanted in and one of the instructors was quite rude about it and made some comment about you. So I figured I had to do something similar. He gave an eye smile at that. But enough of the past, I know you'll need time to think about my offer. Zabuza and Haku had looked at each other and nodded slightly. We'll do it. Hydra looked at them and clapped his hands together. Oh, well good then. On one condition. Hydra groaned. Yes? Zabuza sat up straight. I teach you my style of kenjutsu, and you take up my sword. Hydra blinked, once, then twice. Say what? Kabikari deserves someone that can give it battle. And that no longer is me. Haku is not interested in the ways of the sword. And let's just say I have a feeling about you. Zabuza said, glancing at Haku slightly. I don't know what to say. Just that I'm honored. Hydra said, clearly not expecting anything like this. Zabuza was one of the best swordsmen ever to come out of the mist. And he was gonna get lessons from him? Plus his sword, which was almost as famous as he was. This has been a very successful mission. Zabuza smiled. Good. One last thing, I don't want Haku to fight. Haku turned to his master quickly, but Zabuza-sama I are far too gentle-natured. You're more interested in medicine anyways, are you not? Haku sighed and nodded. Hydra shrugged again. Fine with me. If I can convince the other Jinchuriki to join me, that'll be overkill for firepower. As for the whole medic thing, the blonde gave another eye smile. I think I have a lead on someone to train you for that. If they agree anyways. Now then, I have another week to kill as I finished my mission early. You need to get that arm properly fixed up and then you can start me on training. Zabuza nodded and with Haku's help stood up. He was amazed at how easily and naturally leadership seemed to come to him. All right, before we head off, I want to know just a couple last things. Hydra nodded as he stood. Ask, why AIM? And Hydra can't be your real name. What is it? A distanced look entered the blonde's cerulean eyes as he stared into the distance. Why AIM? Other than my previous reason. It's a promise to friend, and a promise to a teacher. Now they weren't the same person. He walked a ways ahead of the duo before turning around, reaching up and pulling down his rebreather, revealing 6 whisker marks, and the continuation of the scar over his eye. He gave them a warm sunny smile, with a hint of fox-like mirth in it. My name is Uzumaki Naruto, Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, and the first, greatest, last and only student of Salamander Hanzo. Zabuza stared, he couldn't help it really. The scene before him was brutality, elegance and a primal violence all wrapped into one blonde package. It had been 6 days since the incident at the bridge and his new student had taken to the art of Zanbato combat like an Uchiha to insanity. He watched as the blonde spun between the blades of 2 clones, viciously disemboweling one before spinning in mid-air and decapitating the other. He found it odd the drastic change in personality when he was fighting and when he was at ease, or as close as he'd probably ever get to ease. He smiled as the Jinchuriki finished the last of the clones and dropped down to the ground. Holy shit, I'm tired, Naruto said, more as a statement to himself than anything. Yeah, that's the general consequence of your training methods, Zabuza said as he walked up to the blonde. But damn kid, you're getting pretty damn good. Especially for just a week of training. Naruto shrugged from his position on the ground. It's the clones, a special design of mine combining Mizu Bunshin and Kage Bunshin. They self-regenerate minor wounds and have an independent chakra system. Should be able to fool most Dujutsu Kekai Genkei. I call them Hydro Bunshin. Zabuza raised a non-existent eyebrow at the name. Hey, naming shit is not my strong suit. Ruthlessly crushing my enemies is. Zabuza chuckled and nodded. So when do we meet up with you again? I'll meet up with you in Tanzakugai in about 2 months. Should work out to be a week or so after the Chunin exams. Do stay alive, nay? Good companions are so damn hard to find these days. He smiled at that, shouldering the large sword. Zabuza laughed. All right then, brat. See you then. The demon of the mist and his apprentice watched as the bloody Hydra shunshined away in a swirl of icy mist. Haku looked up at his master and father figure. He's going to do big things, isn't he? Zabuza stared at the spot the masked nin had been. Indeed he will. Whether his plans work or fail, his name is one that will be remembered in history. They were silent a moment. So, what do we do for the next few months? Haku merely shrugged and laughed at the sigh and of his master. Interesting times indeed were ahead. 2 days later Naruto sat, leaning against his sword, though it was still awkward for him to call it that, which was driven in earth where the borders of aim, river and fire country all met up. He sighed through his rebreathe staring into the clouded skies. He froze as he detected a presence behind him. "You're a long way from home, little Kiri shinobi," a soft feminine voice said. The blonde tilted his head up and saw the outline of a cloaked woman, the sword blocking the view of her face but leaving the billowing black cloak with its red clouds unhindered. He allowed himself a small smile behind his metallic mask. What can I say? It's a nice vacation spot." A flutter of paper and the blue-haired woman formed in front of him, a neutral expression on her soft features. "You take great risks coming this close to aimed Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi." He tilted his head to the side, his eyes curving into a smile. "And you risk more coming to meet me here, Akatsuki." They paused and stared at each other for a while, both tensed, waiting for the moment. Naruto slowly reached his unclawed hand up and clipped his rebreathe, tossing it to the side. Almost immediately the older woman launched forward and captured the younger ninja's lips with her own. They stayed that way for several minutes before the need for air forced them apart. Konan, as if you hadn't guessed, pressed her forehead against Naruto's. "God, I've missed you." The blonde smiled softly at his lover and gently stroked her cheek. "And I you." She sat on his lap and the two stayed in silence, merely enjoying the other's presence. "He's getting suspicious," she whispered softly. Naruto frowned at that and started to stroke his lover's hair. "Then you leave with me, today. I refuse to risk your safety for a bit more intel." She opened her mouth to protest but stopped when he pressed a finger to her lips and smiled warmly. "Your safety means more to me than anything. Besides, coming to get you was on my list." She grinned at that. "Seriously, take a look," he said, whipping out a small piece of paper. She raised an eyebrow and unfolded the piece of paper. It was split into 2 columns, ongoing goals and immediate needs. Gaining more allies and finding the other Jinchuriki was at the top of the ongoing side. She glanced at the immediate needs and raised her other eyebrows. "Find sword trainer." There was a checkmark after it. "Kick ass and take names in Chunin exams." This one was unchecked, obviously. "Get Konan back from scumbag psychotic ruler with god complex." Naruto took out a pen and checked that one as she read, earning him a quick kiss on the cheek. "Meet up with known allies. Hopefully more than 5. Konan glanced at him and he shrugged, holding up 4 fingers. "Make up kick-ass group name." The brunette sighed and reminded herself this was one of the few times her young lover showed his true age of 15. Design kick-ass cloak. Akatsuki is all evil but damn they dress sharp. Konan stopped reading at that with a laugh, handing him back the list. He lovingly folded it back up and secured it underneath his cloak. "You like your lists, don't you? Keeps me organized. Now, I need to be back in Kiri in a week, which I can make it a dead run with minimal breaks. Do you want to just part as we pass Konoha and meet me there, or make the full trip with me?" Naruto said as he maneuvered her into a position to massage her shoulders. "I'll come with you, though I do wonder how I'm going to get into Konoha," she said, melting into the touch of his hands. "Easier than you think. Since you're an oddity amongst Akatsuki in that you're not an actual criminal, or rather listed as one, you'll be posing as my Junin sensei." She looked up at him and grinned at that. "I do hope you'll be a naughty student for sensei." He grinned and whispered into her ear, "For you? Anytime." Oh god. 'Cause that wasn't a totally lame line. "Hey, fuck you fuzzface. I don't see you coming up with anything better. Who the hell am I supposed to woo? One of my admittedly luxurious tales? I refuse to admit you have a point." "Yeah, you do that. In the meantime, look alive, someone's coming." Naruto flickered his eyes over to Konan's face and noted she had noticed an incoming presence. The blue-haired woman narrowed her eyes at the sole incoming figure. Kisame. The blonde Kiri nin followed her gaze and locked it onto the oncoming nuke nin. The shark man was walking towards the duo at a leisurely pace, a grin adorning his aquatic features. "Konan, whatever are you doing so far away from home?" he said, flashing his shark-like teeth. "I should ask you the same question." Kisame shrugged. "Omi and Itachi were reporting back to a megacure. I decided to search you. Maybe see if you were finally willing to have some fun." He grinned lecherously at that, then reached up, grabbing the handle of Samahata. "And here I find you with some punk Kiri nin. The only explanation that comes to my mind is treason. So I guess I get to have a different kind of fun." It was at this point Naruto had re-affixed his rebreather onto his face and pulled Kabikiri Hucho from the ground. He pointed the massive blade at Kisame. Getting dismembered is your idea of fun? Masochist. Kisame's eye twitched ever so slightly. Afraid not, boy, I'll be the one doing the dismembering around here. With a yell he yanked the massive sharkskin-covered blade from his back, bringing it down towards this impudent little shinobi. Naruto flicked his eyes to Konan, warning her to stay out of this as Kisame was possibly the worst opponent for the paper user. And at the same time the best opponent for him. He gave a feral growl as he brought his own Zanbato up blocking Samahata. He grunted and pushed the sword back, pulling back Kabikiri and swiping at Kisame's torso. Kisame backstepped the slash, then met it with a thrust of his own, catching the Jinchuriki in the side, shaving away through the cloak and grating the blonde's arm. Hey, Samahata doesn't cut. It shaves. Naruto glared at the older man, his scarred eye flickering a deep navy blue, and the pupil elongating slightly. He stabbed to the side of Kisame's head, catching him off guard slightly and spun slicing off most of the shark's hair. And Kabikiri doesn't shave, it decapitates, he growled out. Kisame met him with a growl of his own and the sword fight began anew. Konan could only watch as the two fighters duked it out. Every so often one of them slicing, or shaving, the other. But slowly and surely Kisame was overwhelming the younger fighter in their dance of death. Give it up, kid, you're good. And you use Kabikiri, so you probably took down Zabuza. But you're 10 years too early to fight me. Naruto shrugged as the blades clashed again, pushing against each other for dominance. The blonde poured his strength into it and shoved the much larger man back about a foot and jumping back another few feet himself. You're right, for now at least. So let's try this a different way, shall we? He stabbed Kabikiri into the ground and flew through a set of hand seals. Suiden. Suiryudan no Jutsu. Kisame raised an eyebrow as he dodged the large water dragon that appeared from thin air. All right, I'm impressed. Making a water dragon from the moisture in the air. Some sort of bloodline, I guess. Though if that was true, I wonder what you're doing in mist. I have my reasons. Now drown, fool. Suiden. Miserapa. As Naruto finished speaking, a large torrent of water streamed forth from just outside of his rebreather, blasting into the Akatsuki member's chest, knocking him back. The scarred ninja smirked behind his mask. You may be a better sword fighter than me, have more experience than me, but no one matches me in the field of water. No one. Maybe if we were by a body of water you could stand before me. Kisame glowered at the blonde. It'll take more than that, Gaki. But for now, it's too much effort to try and kill you. Be warned, you'll be targeted by us from now on. He scowled as he shunshined away in swirl of mist. Naruto waited until he felt him disappear before he laughed. Well, it appears Konan-chan's efforts have been fruitful. You have no idea I'm the Jinchuriki of Kyuubi. He grinned as his scarred eyes slowly shifted into its normal state. He turned to his blue-haired lover. Come, love. We should leave this area with haste. He paused for a moment, then snapped his fingers. Ah, first I need your ring. Konan raised an eyebrow but slipped the Akatsuki ring off and tossed it to him nonetheless. As you wish, though I ask why you are keeping it? They can track it. Naruto smiled as he took a silver chain, covered in tiny seals, from around his neck. He unclasped it and slipped the ring onto it. The seals on the chain suppress its tracking abilities. Besides, without it it'll take that much longer for them to seal anything. They're irreplaceable, no? She nodded. Indeed. Orochimaru was the one who came up with them in first place, and with him gone, reforging a new set is impossible. Naruto grinned as he motioned her to follow him. Good, I'll be hunting for these two then. Now come, we have one last appointment to attend to in Fire Country before I return to Kiri. 3 days later in Atofika. So why exactly are we in this place? Konan asked her young lover as they navigated the back streets of the pleasure quarter. This is where they told me to meet them. Something about being less conspicuous. And that they look like what exactly? Konan said, repressing a sigh. They had been wandering around the place for over an hour. She glanced down and smoothed out her clothing again. She had traded in her Akatsuki cloak for a white kimono with light blue clouds on it. Naruto shrugged. He himself was wearing his navy cloak over top a black t-shirt and jeans. His gauntlet had been replaced by a pair of black fingerless fighting gloves, and black bandages were wrapped across the bridge of his nose and neck, hiding his whisker marks. I only have a description for one. 7 feet tall, wearing red armor, a red straw hat and an iwa he had ate. She tapped him on the shoulder and pointed at a figure dressed exactly like that. Like that guy? The one who's been waving at us for about 5 minutes. Naruto looked at the tall man who smiled and waved, motioning them to follow him. Fuck, let's go. He grabbed Konan's hand, intertwining their fingers as he walked across the street and into the empty back alley after the man. Upon arriving, he craned his neck and looked up at the crimson-clad giant. I assume you are the one who sent that note? A nod. And what does an Iwa nin wish of me? The tall shinobi chuckled and wagged his finger. Where's the fun in spoiling the surprise? Though I suppose listening to you guess all day is boring. But I would like to know why you have someone with you. I believe my note said come alone. The scarred Jinchuriki glared at the man. Unavoidable circumstances forced me to pick up my companion before meeting with you. Besides, I believe you said you had a companion yourself. The huge man smiled. I do. But he is not nearly as pretty as Akatsuki-san here. Naruto glared as Konan edged towards a fighting stance. Your information's old. My companion here has recently split from her prior organization. The giant looked her over. Very well, I suppose if 9 trusts you I shall as well, Konan-san. He has proven most shrewd in his dealings so far. Both Naruto and Konan's eyes widened. What did you call me? Why I called you what you are 9-san. As I am 5, you are 9. He grinned as a look of understanding flashed across their faces. I must ask, are you loyal to the mist? Naruto shook off his surprise at finding another Jinchuriki so soon. No. After the upcoming Chunin exams I will be departing from their service. 5 nodded sagely. Good then. Follow me to my hotel room then, my companion is there and he gets irritated when left alone for too long. Naruto glanced at Konan, who shrugged in agreement. Very well then, lead the way. The Jinchuriki smiled and led them through another set of back alleys before arriving at the hotel, which by coincidence was the one Naruto and Konan were staying at, something the blue-haired woman commented on. Hey. This is the hotel we're staying at. 5 glanced at her. Oh? What room? Konan glanced at Naruto and fought back the slight blush to her cheeks. Honeymoon suite. The crimson-clad Jinchuriki looked at Konan, then at Naruto and back to Konan. Lucky son of a bitch, ain't ya? Naruto grinned and wrapped an arm around his lover's waist. Indeed, now hurry. I do have other places to be. I'm sure. Anyways, our room is just up. They were interrupted by a loud crashing sound followed by much cursing. They came to the 2nd floor and saw a large hole that looked as if the room's wall had been shredded. Goddammit. There. 5 sighed. A rather tall figure poked his head through the hole, his shoulder-length bone-white hair falling in front of his face. He was shirtless, with a seal visible over his heart that spread out over most of the left side of his chest. He raised a white eyebrow then glared at 5. Damn it, what the hell took so fucking long? And why the hell are you in that illusion? 5 sighed and gestured at the white-haired man. That is my traveling companion and best friend, however unwillingly, Kagaya Daisuke. Or as I call him, Dai-chan. He grinned then appeared to shimmer. In a brief flash of light the 7-foot giant was replaced by a 5 feet 10 foot tall man. He had shoulder-length blood-red hair and bright crimson eyes. He was wearing a blood-red sleeveless shirt that stretched up into a half-face mask. Similar to the type of shirt worn by one Hitaki Kakashi. He had black cargo pants with a blood-red stripe running up the side, and black and red metal armguards. My name is Makoto, also known as the Crimson Ghost and the Illusion King. The foremost illusionist of our time. I think anyways, I have yet to meet anyone stronger in the art than I. Naruto and Konan both paused and processed the new information. It was Naruto who spoke first. Wait, your name means sincere and you're an illusionist? The redhead eyes smiled. I'm a fan of irony, what can I say? Konan blinked. Wait, the same Crimson Ghost of the Third War? A nod, indeed. I was a mercenary hired out to Iwa by my creators, I suppose? Parents maybe, though I never saw the bastards as such. But you don't look much older than what, 25? And the war 18 years ago. I'm 23 actually. And yeah, the youngest ass kicker in the war. My illusions were already high level due to inside help, I suppose? I caused general disorder and chaos in my wake, leaving nothing behind but bloody ghosts. But those days are over, and now I take pride in being one of the most well-informed person in the elemental countries. It was in my search for others of our kind, he said gesturing at Naruto and Daisuke, that I came across young Naruto here and happened to see one of his lists. I must say I am intrigued by your plan. Naruto raised an eyebrow and frowned. He didn't much like the idea of being spied on, but if it got him a strong ally he wasn't about to argue. I have a question. Which is he? He said pointing at the now fully emerged Daisuke. The topless man in question smoothed out his white karate bottoms and glanced at the blonde. Sanbi. Partially anyways, my clan attempted to make an ultimate weapon, bloodthirsty cretins that they were. They tracked the Sanbi down and attempted to seal it into a newborn, me. But our clan is not known for its sealing techniques for good reason. They didn't know it at the time, but they sealed a tail's worth of power into me, along with Isanede's mind. The thing floating around Kiri now is only 2 full tails of power and mindless, little more than a rabid beast as opposed to his true personality. Oh, what would that be? Intellectual snob. I swear the only thing he's missing is a freaking monocle. They all snickered at that. Makoto shrugged. I have a neurotic, obsessive-compulsive ferret in my head. Konan tilted her head to the side a bit, something Naruto found totally endearing. I thought the goby was a weasel. Common misconception, and never get the furry prick started on it. He'll yap for freaking hours on the glory of ferret kind versus pitiful weasels. Naruto sighed and shook his head a bit, fascinating as this is. Since I assume you guys know my goals then, are you with me? This time it was Daisuke that spoke up. I want to know one thing. Why? Naruto smiled ever so softly. I want to make a place where people like us can live. Somewhere to avoid irrational hatred for things not of our control. And just for people who deserve a better life in general. What, no world domination? Or bring peace to a united world? The man called Hydra laughed, bitterly. And fail horribly? No. The world cannot be saved. There will always be people for whatever intentions that would stand in the way of that. But if I can give peace to a single small country as its guardian? Then maybe my life will have meant more than container of Kyuubi. Makoto and Daisuke looked at each other and smiled. Good enough for us. Until the day you take aim comes, we shall be your eyes and ears in the world. Naruto grinned. Good. I would like for us to meet in Tanzakugai, a week after the Chunin exams. Hopefully we'll have a couple more people with us. The Crimson Ghost grinned behind his mask. We'll see you then, Hydra-sama. Naruto and Konan smiled and parted ways from the two Jinchuriki. 3 weeks later, after returning to Kiri and cashing in the bounty for Zabuza, his sword and severed arm were fairly good proof of his death, it was decided. Especially considering Hydra's record, Naruto and Konan could be found walking up a dirt path, the gates of Konohagakure no Sato coming into view. Naruto was decked in his full combat gear, his rebreather firmly in place, though he was wearing the black bandages underneath anyways, gauntlet on and kabikiri resting on his back. Konan was walking alongside him dressed in standard Kiri Junin wear, a stolen Kiri he had ate around her neck. Its original wearer wouldn't be missing it. Naruto grinned as they approached the gates. Well then, let the games begin. Naruto grunted as he awoke, the ever-cursed sun's pervasive light shining through his hotel window and waking him from the most comfortable sleep he'd had in ages. He looked down at the source of his comfort and smiled as slowly opening eyes fluttered awake behind unkempt blue locks of hair. Morning, she smiled sleepily back at him. Morning, don't you have the exams today? Naruto nodded and slowly rolled from the hotel bed. He yawned and stretched before looking at the closet, debating on how he wanted to dress. What do you think, love? Cloak and mask, or go without them? Konan tipped her head the side, looking her young lover up and down. Are you taking kabikiri sealed or just on your back? He turned his head slightly and grinned, baring his oversized canines. On my back. The brunette smiled at him. Then leave them off. It doesn't work as well with the cloak, and dropping the mask will give you that feral quality. The blonde tipped his head in a slight nod. Freak out the kiddies it is then. He gave a full-bored toothy grin, revealing that most of teeth had a sharper than normal quality to them. He went over a mental checklist as he walked into the large closet, putting his clothing on. There's another Jinchuriki here, he said, slipping his dark navy Enbu-style armor over his torso, covering the spiraling seal on his stomach. Konan raised an eyebrow as she sat up in the bed, bunching the white comforter around her otherwise nude form. Oh? As you predicted then. Who is it? If I had to guess, he started, pulling on black shinobi cargo pants. Sabaku no Gaara. When I was walking around town yesterday I saw him with his teammates. Just looking at him drove my blood wild. He paused, stretching on a black fingerless glove that reached to just under his elbow, a metal plate on the back of its hand. I imagine he contains Shukaku, if that oversized gourd of sand means anything. He clicked his metal gauntlet onto his left arm, the Hydra stylized seal on it flashing a deep blue briefly. He walked out from the closet to the mirror before applying black bandaging around the bridge of his nose and neck, covering his whisker marks. He glanced back as his older lover got up from bed to get dressed herself. He couldn't help but watch. She looked up at him, his eyes glued to her form. Like what you see, she said smirking. Have I told you you're the best girlfriend, lover, fiancé, whatever you wish it to be, ever recently? He said, his eyes not moving. She smiled again, ever so slowly getting dressed. Yes, but it still stands to be said. Though I say that's only because I told you I would allow you to have 2 more girlfriends. He broke contact at that and sighed dramatically. You know I don't care about that, and that I'm not even looking. I know. I also know that intentional or not you gather people to you. I mean you have me, the ex-closest friend of your greatest enemy. Besides, don't we both deserve a large family? And you especially. If all goes according to plan you will be ruling a country and establishing a clan. Hard to do with a woman who will likely only manage to give birth once. She stated, simply finishing putting on her fake Junin gear. Naruto just smiled at that. Odd for a 15-year-old not to run screaming at the mention of children, but he more than any other teen in the world wanted a family. I refuse to acknowledge your so-called point. He grinned as his stare flickered to the slashed aim, and Taki Hide Atesh, leaving them off his shoulders and loosely tying his Kiri protector around his neck, letting his wild blonde hair fall freely. It was tied in the back in a short ponytail reaching to the back of his neck. He glanced back at Konan to see her tying her stolen Hite around her forehead. She walked up giving him a quick kiss on his exposed lips. See you on the other side. She whispered before slipping away towards the area the Junin senseis would be gathering. He grinned, hefting the obscenely large Kabikiri Hucho across his shoulders, disappearing in a swirl of mist. Soaked in the blood of those who stand before me, no doubt. Naruto timed his arrival well, showing up at the exams minutes before the Uchiha prodigy. He walked straight to the 3rd floor. He paused as he saw a certain one-eyed Junin waiting at the entrance to the 3rd floor. He watched with a primal pleasure, Hitachi's sole visible eye widen ever so slightly as he took in the sight of the blonde genin. Naruto grinned widely, a sight he did often but was often obscured by his rebreather. He whispered as he swept past Kakashi, I said I'd face them again, didn't I? Kakashi shuddered as the Kiri nin went past him. I hope Takami my team isn't stupid enough to challenge him on. He paused and thought a moment, an image of Sasuke flickering through his mind. Fuck. Naruto grinned internally as he walked into the testing room. He glanced around at the people in the room, giving each an estimated threat level. Gaara and his team ranked high, but there was something about one of the Kusa teams that threw his danger sense into full alert, and threw his bloodlust up near it, something the other teams noticed. After all, when a muscled, bandaged, scarred blonde guy with a giant sword strapped to his back starts radiating the urge to kill, people notice. The only important people were Gaara, Kabuto and a disguised Orochimaru. All of them looked at the Kiri nin with interest. The Konoha rookie teams looked a little sick though, Naruto noticed as he looked them over. He sneered at them, contempt written all over his face. They all flinched slightly, but none of them withered like Yamanaka Ino, one of only 2 genin conscious for his brutal slaughter of Gato's men on the bridge. It was at that time Team 7 burst through the door in their usual flair, or arrogance, however you wished to call it. Using the distraction, Naruto slipped away several rows down near the Suna team. He sat back and watched as a silver-haired genin walked up to the 9 rookies and after talking with them whipped out a stack of his nin info cards. It was at that point Naruto started to pay more attention to the conversation. Sabaku no Gaara and Rock Lee. Sasuke said to Kabuto. The false genin frowned. No fun if you know their names. Sabaku no Gaara, 15 C-class missions, 30 B-class and 1 A-class mission. My, seems he's never been hurt on a mission either. Several eyebrows rose as the leaf ninjas glanced at the Suna demon vessel. Rock Lee. Here we go. Part of Team Guy, has 40D class mission, 10C class and 1 B rank. His taijutsu is said to be the highest of the leaf genin. No known nin or genjutsu abilities though. Anyone else? Ino nudged Sakura and gestured towards the blonde Kiri nin who was watching them, a predatory look in his eyes. The pink-haired girl paled slightly and pointed at him. How about that blonde Kiri ninja? Kabuto followed her gaze and widened his eyes ever so slightly. He shuffled through his little deck of wonders before finding the appropriate card. No registered name, just Hydra. His nickname is Kiri's Bloody Hydra. He supposedly named everyone of this year's graduating class, in a similar manner of Momochi Zabuza, the demon of the bloody mist. He has 10 C-class missions, 20 B-rank missions, 20 A-class missions. All of those have been listed as assassinations and 1 S-class. The spy looked at the blonde and mentally shuddered. The Kiri nin showed a strength that might rival the fake Konoha ninja himself. He is without a doubt one of the most dangerous genin here, though it appears he is without a team. Everyone who had been listening just gaped at the information as they stared at the blonde with the huge sword, all mentally agreeing to stay away from him. Well, almost all. Uchiha Sasuke merely scoffed it all away as he was after all an Uchiha, thus making him superior. The conversation was halted as a scarred Tokubetsu Junin walked in ordering everyone to sit down. He explained the rules of the test as a couple of Chunin proctors handed out test papers. Naruto sighed as he looked over his information gathering, one would assume. Not my particular forte. A blank 10th question, I think I'll bank on that. He sighed and flipped the paper over as the test began, sketching the scene of a scowling Ibiki looking out into the group of Chunin hopefuls. It was Naruto's personal belief everyone should have a hobby outside of the usual chaos. His was charcoal sketching. The black pen he was given was a suitable enough substitution for his usual materials. 45 minutes later Ibiki sighed, catching Naruto's attention from finishing his drawing. All right, now for the 10th question. However, there is an extra rule for it. If you take it and fail you will lose all right to ever become a Chunin. If you leave now you'll have the chance again later. Gasps ran through the crowd of genin. A few teens immediately got up and left. Naruto merely narrowed his eyes at Ibiki. Well, it's not like I care about never becoming a Chunin. But still something's off about this. Oh, that's his game. Naruto grinned and started to leak bloodlust. Everyone in his row freaked and left, thanking the gods above they didn't have to risk going against the crazy-looking kid with the huge sword. Everyone in the room shuddered slightly, and Ibiki glanced at the Kiri nin with narrowed eyes. He glanced around at the remaining genin. All right then, you pass. A few outcries at that, and the scarred man launched into his explanation, pulling off his bandana revealing his torture wounds. Most of the genin gasped a bit at that. Naruto sighed, tuning out the explanation and subsequent answering of questions in favor of tracking an incoming chakra signal. He did not have to wait long as a large black bundle burst through the window, unfolding into a large banner that read introducing the single Mitarashi Anko, proctor of the second exam. Ibiki palmed his face. You're early as usual. Anko grinned and was about to respond when they heard clapping. Everyone turned and looked at Naruto, who along with 4 Mizu Bunshins, each wearing a Hite 8 of a major village, was holding a scorecard. The original Kiri and the ones wearing the Konoha, Kumo and Suna headbands all had scores of 10, while the Iwa clone had a 6.5. It appears the Iwa judge is not impressed. Try again next year. Everyone gawked at him. Anko nudged Ibiki. I like that kid. She whispered to him before glancing around at the number of genin. Not bad, 46 left, that's what? 15 teams? Well, I'll have them but in half in the next exam. She grinned manically. All right maggots, follow me. The remaining genin got up and ran after her as she disappeared back out the window. Naruto hung back, giving his drawing a quick signature before dissolving his clones into a fine mist and disappearing after the rest of the group. Ibiki sighed and started looking over the papers. He raised an eyebrow at the Kiri shinobis before his eye caught the signature, Uzumaki-en. Both eyes widened as he grabbed the paper and ran off to the Hokage. Naruto grinned as he entered the so-called Forest of Death. Track down another team and get their scroll? Killing allowed? He gave a toothy grin and went over his mental checklist. The Kusa team would be worth tracking, along with the Suna. He paused and mused over that. I'll leave Suna out for now. I want to fight that Gaara in the finals. No risk of interference. He tapped a steel-clawed finger to his chin. But who first? One of the teams from AIM? He gripped his sword tighter and dashed into the forest. I think so. Half an hour later found our favorite blonde standing in a tree observing an AIM team, who were observing a Leaf team. With a mad grin he hopped down onto a branch behind the closest nin. He tapped the AIM ninja in the shoulder and whispered into his ear. So tell me, servant of the mad god, how is AIM these days? The ninja tensed. You mock Pain-sama? I mock fools who follow a man who is ruining their country. Naruto paused and tapped his left middle finger to the AIM nin's back, right behind his heart. But I need not mock the dead. A sliver of water shot from the finger, piercing the ninja through. His body dropped quietly to the ground. His two companions whipped around to see the cause of the noise. One of them, a kunoichi, was met by the sight of a flying kabikiri, aimed directly at her neck. It was the last thing she saw before her head and shoulders parted ways. Her companion's last sight was the gaping maw of one of Naruto's hydras, its icy fangs glistening in the dim light of the appropriately named Forest of Death. 30 minutes later the Konoha Genin would find the ransacked body of 3 dead AIM ninjas. By that time Naruto was hanging around the tower, setting the new record for shortest completion time, 37 minutes and 56 seconds. Naruto sat outside in front of the tower. He refused to be cooped up there for 5 days with nothing to do. He sat staring into the forest, a foreboding presence pervading the air. Closing his eyes he extended his sense outward, trying to find the cause of his unease. His eyes flew open as he felt a rush of dark chakra coming from the middle of the forest, a grim smile adorning his face. Finally, something to do, he whispered to himself before grabbing his sword and running into the darkening tree line. Anko was not in the best of ways at the moment. Her double suicide attempt failed epically and now she was stuck, dying on the ground, while her former teacher stood over her using that damn curse seal of his to torture her as she slowly died. If she had the energy she would have rolled her eyes as the bastard snake ranted on and on about Kami knows what. Can't he just kill me? Is the speech really fucking necessary? She mustered her strength and glared at the man she hated so much, the face of that unfortunate grass kunoichi half hanging off his own. As she glared she caught sight of some movement and flash behind the pedophilic bastard. Orochimaru froze mid-rant as a primeval dread washed over the area, and a primal roar screamed from behind him. Only decades of a highly tuned sense of self-preservation helped him dodge the ice-covered head of a water hydra as it slammed into the ground where he had been standing. The snake Sanin whirled around, his kusanagi drawn. He was met with the sight of 4 ice-armored hydra heads hovering in the air, seemingly following his movements. He watched as the head he dodged reared up and joined its companions. The Sanin growled, "Who's there? Show yourself." Naruto stepped out from the tree branch he was on, dropping to the ground. All 5 hydras seemed to be connected to his gauntlet-clad hand, the kabikiri gripped in his right hand. He stretched it out and pointed it at the Sanin. "Here I am, Orochimaru, yes?" A nod in the affirmative. "Oh good, that means I was right all along. I presume you're here for the Uchiha boy?" The snake narrowed his eyes. "Yes. Am I to assume you've already given him one of your little cursed hickeys?" Orochimaru growled at the blonde. "I'll take that as a yes. Since I imagine that's a real chakra drain and you've been fighting your apprentice. Why don't you save us both some trouble and leave? Are you threatening me, boy?" "Stating a fact. I'm not quite at your level. Yet. But I am fresh and ready to fight, you are not. And since I can only imagine Enbu sensed that chakra burst a while ago, they'll be coming soon. Thus further tipping the odds against you." Naruto shrugged nonchalantly. "I've been told in such situations you're likely to flee then fight. I just want to skip ahead to that and not worry about my own health." "And who told you that about me?" "A few people. My former master, Salamander Hanzo, was the one who laughed about it the most though." Orochimaru was on edge with that comment. A student of Hanzo? He had little doubt that man's legacy would be dangerous indeed. He cursed internally. The blonde made good points. He couldn't be caught now. "You are called Hydra, yes? We shall meet again, Hydra-kun. Kukakuku," he said before dissolving into mud. Naruto shivered and walked up to Anko. "That man creeps me out." He knelt beside the fallen kunoichi. "All right, let's see if I can help any." Despite what I told him, I haven't sensed an Anbu presence since I left the tower. Anko narrowed her eyes at that. But she wasn't too surprised. After all, who would care if the snake whore died? She grumbled that out as Naruto ran green glowing hands over her body. She sighed and looked at him. Don't bother, I've been hit with a rather deadly poison and I doubt some genin could help. The blonde sighed and furrowed his brows. So it seems. But having you die isn't something I wish to settle for just yet. His hands paused above her shoulder, hovering over her curse mark. Huh, did you know you should be dead? Oh, what do you mean by that? This seal is highly defective. It looks like its purpose is to forcibly draw chakra from its user for use at a later date. Yours should have killed you, it looks like. It's severely screwing with your chakra network. If I had to estimate, I'd say you can't access a good 75% of your chakra. He slowly drifted off, lost in his own thoughts as he studied the seal, already coming up with a way to change it and heal her. She watched him intently for a while as her health slowly faded. She was brought back to clarity as the bandaged ninja snapped his fingers. Aha, I could do it like this. Should yield some interesting side effects too. Would you like me to fix it? And you? She narrowed her eyes. What's the price? I'm starting an organization. And I am in need of business partners, I suppose you could call them. So that's my deal. Your employment in exchange for your life. He smiled as his hand drifted above her shoulder. Anko lied there, thoughts blazing through her mind. She imagined that this involved leaving Konoha, but was there any real reason to stay here? She knew how long it should have taken those Anbu to get here. She closed her eyes and sighed. Fine, do it. Naruto smiled. Good choice. Now, I'm about to channel refined demonic chakra into your seal. Her eyes widened at that. It's a single elemental type, and with the buffers designed into the seal you should be fine. In fact, it'll heal you right up. I think. Anyways, doing this will change your seal somewhat, into a chakra converter. Whenever you use it you'll gain a boost in demonic chakra. Much like a regular curse seal gets a burst of whatever kind of chakra it's made of. Using it will give you an advanced regeneration rate, and an extremely high water affinity, which if need be I can help train you with. I also imagine this'll repair your damaged chakra network. So you should be more powerful without it as well. He grinned at her flabbergasted expression. Oh, this'll hurt like a bitch, so brace yourself, K? He said before the green chakra around his hand turned a deep blue, almost black color and surged into the seal. He stepped back as the seal shifted from 3 tomos into 9. If you looked close enough they were Hydra heads, coiled up at the ends. They quickly spread across her body, in a deep blue glow, rapidly healing her of her injuries. Her brown eyes snapped open as the pain suddenly stopped, and the seal receded back. She looked at the blonde, who was smiling happily, and smiled back before promptly passing out. With a sigh Naruto picked up the kunoichi bridal style, his sword strapped to his back, and headed back towards the tower. 4 days passed and they had been far busier than Anko had originally expected them to be. She had woken up in the tower, her home, staring into the open eyes of her savior. From that point it had gotten hectic, reporting Orochimaru and his threat to the Sandame, who had been looking very pale as of late, minus the involvement of the Kiri ninja. She was currently sitting in a room with Naruto, whose name she had finally found out, and Konan. They had informed her of their plans regarding the Jinchuriki and aim. She had been surprised to learn that the Kiri ninja who saved her was the Kyuubi vessel, but looking back on how she vaguely remembered his treatment, and the festival that occurred on the day he was finally declared dead, she didn't blame the kid. Actually, she wondered why burn Konoha to the ground wasn't on one of his many lists. When she had asked he merely shrugged and told her he wasn't the type to hold grudges. She took a sip of tea and sighed. So you're going to leave after the Chunin exams then? Naruto nodded, indeed. Now, do know you don't have to join me. What I said back in the forest was more to get you to listen to my offer. Anko got a faraway look in her eyes. No. I'll go with you. Too much prejudice here. I have a few friends, but the good doesn't always outweigh the bad. Konan looked at the snake summoner with a slight smile. Good. I'm surprised no one has noticed your increased chakra. I mean you almost radiate power now. Anko grinned at that. Yeah. I feel better than I have in years. Then she sighed. I guess people just don't pay attention to me that much. Naruto smiled at her. Don't worry about that. After all, I plan to make a place for all those like us. The rejects of society. He paused, toying with that. We still need a name. Both girls sighed. Can't that wait? Fine, fine. So, when do the third exams begin? Anko glanced at a clock. In 45 minutes. Shall we be going? Naruto and Konan glanced at each other and smiled. Yes, let's. Konan sat in the stands watching the genin gather and wait. Her gaze followed her blonde young lover as a soft smile crept across her face. She silently laughed at the oddity of it all, someone her age falling in love with a 15-year-old boy, and any 15-year-old, but the enemy of someone she once saw as a brother, and the student of her greatest enemy. She closed her eyes as memories from 3 years prior flooded her mind. Flashback. Konan sighed as she walked through a small town on the border of wind and rain. Border patrol was always so monotonous. She slumped slightly. There had been good reason for this though. Salamander Hanzo, a man thought dead, had shown up a week prior and challenged Pain. This time the Rinnegan user made sure he died. But the very fact he had still been alive and apparently living in rain was troubling, and so Konan found herself checking all the small border towns for anyone that might have housed Hanzo, or any other possible criminal activity. She growled as she stared up to the rain-filled heavens. If something did happen, she was nigh useless this wet. She shook herself and glanced around for somewhere that would offer some refuge for the ever-present rain. She found it in a small ramen restaurant. She quickly ducked in and rubbed her hands together, trying to get some warmth back now that she had escaped the biting cold wetness outside. The place was empty, save for one other occupant, a blonde child, no older than 13, sitting at the counter with a stack of empty bowls in front of him. She narrowed her eyes. Something about the kid set off warning bells in her mind. Something about the way he was sitting, the clothes he was wearing, from the dark navy blue, to the goggles hanging loosely from his neck. "Excuse me, miss, what'll you be having?" The portly man across the counter, obviously the owner, asked her. Konan shook her paranoid thoughts about the blonde from her head and smiled sweetly at the man. Something warm." The man laughed. "How's a bowl of miso sound?" She nodded. "Thanks." Konan relaxed slightly as she sat down, a few seats down from the blonde child. She turned to look at him to find him staring at her. It made her uncomfortable. That look, as if he was seeing through her soul and judging her. She took the time to study him a bit though, years of being a shinobi ingrained to observe everything, no doubt. He had blue eyes, bluer than any she had ever seen. 6 whisker marks adorned his cheeks. She couldn't tell if they were scars, tattoos, or something else. The air between them thickened with tension until finally the child sighed and turned back to his food. Konan shook her head slightly and turned to see her own meal in front of her. Had she really been that out of it? Silence reigned as they ate, and the shopkeeper went into the back wondering if his brother Tucci had to put up with this kind of crap in Konoha. The blonde leaned back in his chair and sighed. He turned to Konan. "So, I guess this means he's dead. Now what should I do?" Konan raised an eyebrow at the odd question. She watched him pull 2 pieces of paper from his pocket, look at them both and then crumple one in his hand. He carefully folded the other and put it into an inner pocket. He turned to the blue net and edged his head to the side. "Tell me, do you like the weather?" The paper user was unsure how to respond to that, so she picked simple. Number. I don't." The blonde nodded sagely, rubbing his chin. Elaborate. "Excuse me?" she asked. Why don't you like the rain?" he asked again. "Humor me." Konan mentally sighed but decided to do as he asked. "To me, the country is crying for all the pointless deaths and sins inflicted upon it." "That's stupid," he said flatly. She narrowed her eyes. "It's nothing I expect a child to understand." He waved her off. "No. It's stupid. To me, rain is the comforting sound at night, when nothing else is there. It is the life-blood of the trees and forest I have called home. Though at the end of it all, it simply is. It falls because it must. After all, what would this world be without rain? A barren, desolate wasteland." He paused for a moment. "But you are right. This country is crying for the stupidity of not one but 2 leaders. One a madman, the other a zealot lost in his own propaganda." Konan's gaze sharpened. "You." A raised hand silenced her as the boy put down money to cover both of their meals. "Walk with me and I will show you," he said, hefting his bag and heading out the door. Put out, but slightly intrigued, she followed him. She didn't know it, but that singular decision would drastically change the course of her life. End flashback. For now, Konan was shaken from her thoughts as Anko elbowed her. Hey, pay attention, it's starting. The Hokage had just finished going over the reasons why the Chunin exams were held, and a few people dropped out. The examiner, Hayate, stepped forward. The remaining numbers are slightly off, so we'd like to ask for a volunteer to fight twice. Without hesitation, the unloyal Kiri nin raised his hand. I'll do it. The proctor nodded. All right then. Round 1. Everyone turned to a large electronic sign. Names flew by before settling on Uchiha Sasuke and Akato Yoroi. Would everyone besides the competitors please leave the arena? Konan paid little attention as the curse seal affected Sasuke finally managed to beat down the older Konoha genin using a Sharingan-copied taijutsu move. Kakashi shunshined into the arena, taking his student away, undoubtedly to have some sort of counter seal put on. She snorted at that. From what she had seen of the kid, he would abuse the seal as much as possible. The sign spun again and 2 more names popped up. She fully opened her eyes and paid more attention. Would Hydra and Aburame Shino please come to the arena floor? The sickly proctor called out. Naruto grinned as calmly walked into the arena. He gave a savage grin as his opponent appeared in a pillar of bugs. He grabbed Kabikiri from his back, spinning it a few times with his right hand. He had to hold back from laughing at the Aburame's barely audible gulp from seeing someone swing a massive blade like that easily with a single hand. Don't lose too fast, he said with a distinct feral edge in his voice. Hajime. Shino jumped back and drew 2 kunai, settling into a defensive position. His blonde foe merely laughed before stabbing his zanbato into the ground. Shino raised an eyebrow. Why would you do that? Hydra grinned, baring his fangs. I don't need it. Before the bug user could react, he dashed forward, with speeds far too high for a mere genin, and thrust his clawed hand at Shino's sunglasses. The bug boy barely managed to deflect the attack with a kunai before being brutally smashed to the side via back spin kick to the side of his head. He shook his head, clearing the mental fog, and flung his kunai at the Kiri shinobi, who laughed as he dodged one and caught the other, crushing it in his gauntlet hand. With a silent curse, he sent out a small swarm of his Kikai bugs towards the blonde. He watched with no small satisfaction as they latched on and started to drain him of his chakra. The satisfaction waned as the blonde still stood standing, not even looking fazed. Slowly the Kiri nin walked over, his eyes never leaving the Aburames. Naruto stalked forward like a predator toying with its prey. He had enough killing intent focused on the bug user to freeze him in his tracks. He walked right up to and leaned in, and whispered to his ear, I'm afraid that won't work on me. He straightened and smiled, bringing up his metal-clawed hand up for a strike. Every nerve in Shino's body was telling him to run, and as far away from this man as possible. His ability to move came just in time to dodge his head, preventing a direct claw on his face. Instead, leaving a small trail of blood across his cheek. Shino jumped away, across the arena, and flung a handful of shuriken at Hydra. Hydra laughed and he threw out a handful of kunai to intercept the shuriken. He paused and looked down at the small trickle of blood on one of his claws. And I win. Hayate looked at him with a puzzled look, when Shino collapsed, seizing on the floor. Poison. Shit. Winner. Hydra. Naruto grinned as the medic nin rushed by him to the writhing Aburame heir. He withdrew a small vial and tossed it to them. Here's the anti-venom. He's got. 4 minutes if not treated. Gotta love them sea snakes. He laughed as he walked back to the stands, as the medics rushed off with Shino. He glanced up at his blue-haired angel sitting in the stands and blew her a kiss before sitting back down. Up in the stands, a few of the Junin senseis turned to Konan with questioning looks on their faces. She ignored them, fighting the blush that was slowly creeping onto her face as she once again drifted into memory lane. Flashback. Konan stared at the boy in front of her as she walked outside. She wasn't sure why she was following him. Maybe a curiosity as to why a child could speak to her with such conviction. The streets were covered in a drizzling rain, the norm for AIM, though she noted the falling droplets were no longer the biting cold they had been. The child in front of her seemed unperturbed by the water, standing outside of the overhang, letting his blonde hair get wet and fall down onto his face. Come, I will show you what your own self-pity has prevented you from seeing, he said, simply motioning for her as he walked down the street. She bristled at the comment as she followed him. What gives you the right to judge me? She said, her voice betraying her irritation. He turned his head, aimed it to the side. I am not judging you. I am merely stating a fact based on observations. You are saddened by the state this country is in, but you are doing nothing to stop it." He paused and gestured to the street they were on. It was barren, all the businesses closed and not a soul in sight. 10 years ago this was a bustling main street of the town. 8 years ago, Hanzo was deposed and the borders were fully closed. The first store closed 2 months afterwards, the rest followed soon after. Many of the family were forced to move, and fell prey to the many bandits looking to make an easy Ryo. He paused again, turning his head to make sure the blue-haired woman was following. They turned down another series of streets, ending up in an abandoned residential area. Most of these are empty. This town went from a population of a few thousand to a few hundred as people fled from aim. The schools have closed down, and the hospital is in shambles. If people want anything they have to smuggle it in, and with smuggling comes a host of other criminal activities. She glared at him. One border town does not make an entire country. I'd agree, if this town wasn't one of the better off towns I've seen. He said, glaring back. Now, I'm not saying the country went to hell after the Mad God took over. Hanzo was no gifted leader either. He ruled through strength and fear. The population was cowed underneath him, and this made it easy for pain to take over. It was making a bad thing worse. Her pale gray eyes hardened. You know nothing of pain, what his goals are or, au contraire, I know exactly what his goals are. The tone of the blonde's voice made steel seem soft in comparison. Uniting the world through pain. The most fucking retarded idea I have ever heard of. Pain and suffering cause one thing, more pain and suffering. If he truly believes universal pain is a way to peace, he is a delusional fool. Konan flinched at his tone, backing up a half step. To make matters worse, he wants to take the people whose lives are the very definition of pain and suffering, and kill them to further his goals. Hypocrisy at its finest, yes? A look of realization spread across her features. You're a Jinchuriki, aren't you? He bared his fangs in a growl. Do not call me that. A label people gave us, that we are a human sacrifice. Nothing more than a tool to die for the will of others. I will not accept that. He sneered as his pupils slit, and a sickly bluish-black chakra started to overcome him. I will never be a tool. I am human, not some subspecies relegated to the whims of someone else. When my life ends, be it of old age or battle, people will know who I made myself to be. My life will not be dictated by others. Konan stepped back, the power and emotion coming from the blonde in front of her driving her back. It was then she felt it, that twinge of doubt crept into her mind. The self-doubt that forced her to look at her life, who she was and who she had become. She slumped to her knees in a rush of self-loathing. She looked up at the blonde. Why? Why did you shatter me? He closed his eyes and the energy receded, his eyes turning back to normal. He opened them, blue meeting gray. Your eyes. They speak of pain, buried beneath a carefully constructed facade. I know exactly who you are, Konan of the Akatsuki. So now, I ask you. Why? A lone tear fell down her face, hidden by the rain, because I had nowhere else to go. I knew what we were doing was wrong. But I was scared. I kept telling myself it was all right, that he was the same person he always was, but he's changed. Or maybe he hasn't. I don't know anymore. The blonde sighed. A crying woman was his weakness. He walked up to the older woman and put his arms around her. It's fine. Sometimes we're forced to do things we don't want to. He groaned mentally as the Konan buried her head into his shirt, letting the tears come more freely. He sighed and awkwardly patted her head. She pulled away from him after a few minutes. Thanks. She paused and looked at him. What is your name? The name of the one who shattered me, so I could see the light. At this he gave a fanged grin. My name? My name is Uzumaki Naruto, Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, and the first, greatest, last and only student of Salamander Hanzo. He paused. May the old bastard rot in 1,000 hells. She laughed at that, and Naruto smiled. So you can smile, good. You're much prettier when you smile. He reached up and brushed a tear from her face, making her blush. So tell me about yourself, Konan. They spent the next several hours on a riverbank, sharing their life stories. She smiled more that day than any previous ones combined. Eventually an old clock tower informed the pair the arrival of midnight, and with it a new day. Konan helped Naruto to his feet. So, where will you go from here? Naruto shrugged. Tacky probably, from there who knows. But, I will be back. Aim is my goal, my dream to see this place prosper as it deserves. He paused, I'll make it a home for anyone like me. Konan watched him as he stared into the distance, and believed he'd be able to do it. She sighed, mustered up her courage and grabbed the blonde, spinning him around and kissing him on the lips. She smirked at the stunned expression on his face, come back for me someday. And with that she left. Flashback end. Konan smiled again at the memory of her first real kiss, broken again from her reverie by Anko elbowing her. You spaced out again, you've missed almost all the fights. Anko said. Konan shrugged apologetically. Sorry, anything important happen? Not really, Gaara got through, unsurprisingly. The lamest bitch fight I have ever seen, it shamed the name of Kunoichi everywhere. The Hyuga trashed the Inuzuka. More importantly it's his turn again. Konan looked up at the board, the two names on it Hydra vs Yakushi Kabuto. In the arena Naruto stared across at the silver-haired genin and smiled, gripping his sword tightly. You'll be fun. Kabuto smirked back at him, pushing up his glasses. Indeed. Hayate stepped back from the two. All right, the last match for the preliminary rounds. Hajime. Naruto grabbed his sword as Kabuto activated his chakra scalpels. They rushed each other, Naruto bringing down his sword, missing as Kabuto lashed out at his side. Naruto grunted as the scalpels severed several of his abdominal muscles. He grunted and lashed out with a kick, catching Kabuto in the head, sending the medic ninja flying. Both paused, Kyuubi healing Naruto's muscles and Kabuto healing his nose. Naruto grinned, looks like I had to be serious after all. He plucked a small scroll from his belt and tossed it in the air. As the scroll unraveled he started to fly through a series of hand signs. The scroll opened, and a geyser of water burst forth just as Naruto called out, Sweden. Taiju Suiryuden no Jutsu. Kabuto leapt back to avoid the 10 water dragon heads that burst from the water at him. He dodged 8, the last 2 nailing him in the chest, sending him backwards. The gray-haired nin was given no time to rest as the blonde flew through another set of hand seals. Sweden. Suikoden no Jutsu. Kabuto swore as 5 water sharks burst from the puddles, 3 missed, the other 2 clamped down on his arms before disappearing, leaving them a bloody shredded mess. He growled, his arms glowing green as they healed as he charged Naruto again. Said blonde merely smiled, Kirigakure no Jutsu. Mist from the leftover water slowly rose, and soon covered the arena. Kabuto looked around, this was not how it was supposed to go. Damn it, where are you? A voice from behind him raised the hairs on his neck. Right here. Kabuto flipped and kicked out towards the voice, hitting nothing. He paused, trying to listen for something, anything that would tell him where his opponent was. His eyes brightened as the mist began to clear, only to darken as the last thing he felt, cold steel across his neck, darkened them forever. Those watching saw the mist start to clear, then the sweeping motion of Hydra's sword, and a small head-sized object fly away. Hayate gulped at the sight, it had happened far too fast for him to stop. Winner. By decapitation. Hydra. A chill ran through the gathered genins as he wiped his blade off on Kabuto's jacket. Gaara only grinned, as the mad ravings of his mother called for the blonde's blood. Hayate called the winners to arena floor. All right, everyone draw a number to determine the matchups for the final round. Naruto drew 1. Kin-Suchi the Kunoichi from Sound drew 5, Hyuga Neji drew a 4, Tamari drew 7, Gaara drew 2, Kankuro drew 6, and Dosu Kinuta drew 8. Leaving the matches. Round 1. Hydra vs Gaara. Round 2. Hyuga Neji vs Uchiha Sasuke. Round 3. Kin-Suchi vs Kankuro. Round 4. Tamari vs Dosu Kinuta. Naruto's eyes met Gaara's, both smiled widely, albeit for different reasons. The Hokage stood, all right, you have 1 month preparation. I hope your time is spent wisely. A half-hour later found Naruto and Konan in their hotel room. Naruto sighed as he stripped off his shinobi gear. Nice to be out of that fucking tower. Konan nodded, indeed. You know what I was thinking about today? No, what were you thinking about today? Naruto said, walking up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. The day we first met. Naruto nodded as he started to kiss the back of her neck. Konan smiled, leaning into his body. I can never thank you enough for opening my eyes. Naruto smiled softly and turned her around, sitting on the edge of the bed and positioning her on his lap. He gently rubbed her cheeks with his hands. "You thank me enough by being with me." He smiled and tenderly kissed her on the lips. "Your presence alone is all I ever need, and more than I ever thought I would have." Konan grinned as she kissed his neck and jawline, her kimono falling from her shoulders. "For as long as I can I will stand with you, Naruto." She paused and ran his shirt up his chest and off his arms. "I love you more than I could ever put into words." Naruto leaned up, kissing her heatedly on the lips as his hands came up to her "As I love you as well, my beautiful Tenchi." The two rolled out flat on the bed, in no short time lying skin to skin. Naruto asking for entrance, and Konan begging for release. Both giving into their physical and emotional need for each other. A half hour later found the two lying breathing slowly, Naruto with his arms wrapped around Konan from behind, his head resting on her back as the two slowly drifted into sweet sleep. The sound of heavy knocking at the door awoke Naruto. The blonde groaned as he sat up, glaring hatefully at the door. He glanced at the slowly waking form of his lover beside him and smiled gently as he ran his hand through her hair. She yawned. "What is it?" Naruto shrugged. "Damned if I know. Just stay there and look gorgeous, I'll be back in a bit." Konan smiled drowsily and cuddled back into the warm hotel bed comforter. Naruto sighed as he slipped on a pair of black boxers and stumbled to the door, not quite fully awake yet. He reached it and flung it open, glaring at the people on the other side. "The fuck you want at this ungodly time in the morning?" The pair of Anbu stood unmoving, their faces hidden. When the hell did 9:30 become early? The Neko-masked Anbu thought. She sighed and mentally shook the question away, opting to stare down at the young blonde. "Hokage-sama has requested your presence." Naruto sighed and rolled his eyes. "That's nice. Maybe I'll go pay the old goat a visit sometime today then," he said, finishing with a sneer towards the Anbu. The Tora-masked Anbu flinched, stepped forward, his tone harsh. "When Hokage-sama summons you, you come now," he growled out with no small amount of malice. Naruto turned his head and glared at Tora. "Maybe you should remember the symbol I wear isn't a leaf, you tree hugger. Your Hokage has no authority over me." He paused and ran his hand through his hair. "But in the interest of being polite during my stay here, you may inform him I will be there after I get change." He sneered again, then slammed the door on the two Anbu. He waited silently for their chakra signatures to disappear before he walked over to the bed and flopped down, hands over his eyes. Konan opened an eye and looked at him. "Problems, love?" Naruto smiled at her as he moved his hands, splaying them outwards. "Not really." He paused and smiled. "Actually, I might even get to have some fun out of all of this," he said, sitting up. Konan nodded and closed her eyes again. "Just don't murder anyone or do anything else to get us kicked out. We have this room paid for a month." Naruto waved dismissively. "It'll be fine. I should be back in a couple hours then," he said, slipping into a set of casual clothes. He smirked as he checked himself out in the mirror. He was wearing black cargo pants and a long-sleeve navy shirt, with the design of a curled-up orange fox on it. He smirked, slipping on a pair of sunglasses before slipping out of the room. Naruto sighed, stretching his arms above his head in an exaggerated yawn. He had foregone the bandages covering his whisker marks, and it still seemed no one recognized him. They were all glaring hatefully at his shirt. Well, some were staring at the rather large attention-grabbing scar that ran from his hairline, crossed his whisker marks and ended an inch or so short of his chin. He paused in the street and brought a hand up, running it along the scar. Flashback. A young blonde boy, around 13 years of age, snarled at his captives. "The hell you fuckheads want?" The leader, an Iwa Junin, grinned viciously at his captive. "Why, we're going to bring back the spawn of Namikaze for a public execution. But first, some torture." His grin turned harsh as his eyes narrowed. "My own appeasement to the father I lost at the hands of yours." Without another word, he dug his kunai into the blonde's eye, dragging it down. The young Naruto howled in pain as the dull chipped weapon severed flesh and scratched bone. Blazing red chakra burned at the wound, regenerating it, and reforming the lost eye. The other Iwa shinobi smirked. "Looks like our toy is durable. More fun for everyone." The group laughed and pulled out their own weapons, advancing on the blonde. Hours later into the night, Naruto sat slumped against a tree, his throat dry and bloodied from screaming in pain, scars littering his face, oozing the precious red blood all over the ground. The shinobi, upon seeing his advanced healing, decided to play a game. Who could make the longest-lasting scar? However, this had unexpected results. A human body can only take so much, and with the constant destruction and use of demonic chakra in the reforming, his eyes had changed. Instead of the sky blue it had once been, his left eye had darkened to an almost black color. So dark it almost hid the slit of the pupil. His right eye, however, had brightened to a bright almost white blue, with tiny spots of black around the slit pupil. Both eyes snapped wide open as a single drop of rain fell on his nose. He craned his bloody head to the sky. He grinned at the dark clouds overhead. A grin that turned to laughter as the heavens opened up and the rain fell in sheets. His laughter drew the attention of the shinobi on guard, who walked up and kicked the blonde roughly in the gut. "What's gotten into you, freak?" Naruto edged his head the side, the water washing away the blood from his face, and gave a maniacal grin. The rain droplets around him suddenly started falling harder, turning to hail and slashing away his bindings. The Iwa nin snarled and kicked again at the blonde, only to have a recently freed hand grab it. Naruto laughed again, a hint of insanity finding its way into his voice, before he wrenched the mont's leg from its socket. By this time the others had awoken and jumped to the ready, just in time to see a burning red aura consume the blonde as he leapt to his own feet. His mad laughing only overcome by the crack of ice breaking. It would be the last thing three of them heard. The fourth, the Junin who had had his leg wrenched out, stared up in horror at the demonic-looking blonde, and glanced back at the steaming corpses. Yes, you read that right, of his companions and friends. He wailed in sorrow and tried to ready a kunai, a shuriken, anything to throw at the monster that stood before him. Naruto merely glanced down at the struggling ninja, still lost in the awe of what he had just done, and the adrenaline rush of having the Kyuubi's unrefined demonic chakra flowing through his body. He looked at a clawed hand, covered in the bright red aura of chakra, and smiled as he reached up and slashed his own face, leaving a deep jagged scar over his left eye. He looked back down at his enemy and smiled. "Looks like I win in that too." He laughed as the ninja screamed, an onrush of sharp hail ending his life. 3 days later Naruto sat at the edge of a river staring at his reflection. His eyes had gone back to their normal color, but the scar still remained. He ran his hand over the Yukai-inflicted wound and sighed softly. People will always hate. Ignorance will always remain. He shuddered again at the memory of losing control. Something he silently vowed he would never do again. Flashback end. Naruto shook his head of the memory. Several times since that incident had he come dangerously close to losing it. But now he mostly let his wild side show in battle, where it was useful. Outside, he smiled thinking of Konan. She helped to control it. He paused and looked around. Wait, where the hell am I? He glanced around and spotted a ramen stand, and his stomach growled. He shrugged and grinned. The Hokage could wait. He walked over and sat down. The owner smiled at him. "What can I get for you, sir?" Naruto hemmed and howed for a bit before nodding to himself. "One of everything." The owner paused and stared at the boy. "Hey, are you sure?" Naruto tapped his chin thoughtfully. "You're right. Make it 2 of everything." Tucci stared, then let a large grin cover his face before calling into the back. "Ayame, we've got a new favorite customer." Naruto spent the next hour chatting away with the kind pair, and eating ramen. He reluctantly got up and left when another pair of Enbu showed up glaring at him. With a dramatic sigh he rose and dropped twice the amount of cash down for the food. "Thanks for the good company," he said, giving them a wink as he walked off to follow the Anbu to the Hokage tower. Tucci watched him go, a smile still on his face. He paused a bit. "Ya no Ayame, that kid seems a lot like the one my brother used to send letters about. Wonder if it's the same one?" The brunette merely shrugged before disappearing into the back. Naruto flashed his fangs at the young secretary, causing her to flinch as the blonde walked into the Hokage's office, flanked by a pair of Anbu. He gave the aging military leader a feral grin, and laughed mentally as Sarutobi flinched ever so slightly. "So, Hokage-san, I hear you asked for my presence?" Hiruzen looked over the young blonde, a pang of sadness shot through him as he sighed. Seeing him up close there was no more doubt in his mind. This was most definitely the son of Namikaze Minato. His eyes lingered over the bright orange fox design. "Yeah, he knows about that. I've asked you here to confirm something, and I believe I just have." Naruto spotted a couch and flopped down onto it, his arms splayed across the top. "What, that I'm Uzumaki Naruto, Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. His grin grew wider as the Hokage looked away, guilt evident in his eyes, and both Enbu flinched at the mention of Kyuubi. Sarutobi sighed, so how did you find out? Meh, my old master told me, the giant seal on my gut was a dead giveaway. Naruto said, with a nonchalant shrug. Intrigue flashed across the Sandame's face. Oh? Who was that? Naruto tsked and wagged his finger. Now that would be telling, and I have no reason to tell you. The Sandame looked sadly at the young man. I am truly sorry for how you were treated, Naruto. I wish there was something I could do to make it up to you. Oh, there isn't, he replied flatly. I'd say your brutal lack of action thoroughly fucked me over and probably scarred me for life. I'm undoubtedly a psychiatrist's wet dream, on the other hand though. Had I not realized what a shithole this place is, I never would have met my master, or the love of my life. He paused here, crossing his legs while he absent-mindedly tapped his chin. I would like to ask a favor though. Sarutobi nodded, if it is within my power. Naruto repressed a snort. For being the vaunted fire shadow, the Sarutobi wielded a piss-poor amount of power. All I want is my match with Gaara to take place last. The Hokage narrowed his brow in confusion. Naruto continued, it's for your own good. I have no doubt our fight will be intense, and I figured it would be more fair if everyone got their chance to show themselves off like prized poodles at a dog show first. That is after all what these tests are, just a huge dog show. I must say though, Konoha isn't looking too well so far. Sarutobi sighed, Konoha indeed wasn't doing well. Naruto went on with a chuckle, not with that one Nara genin giving up in his fight after he saw me destroy that Aburame. Then, you had an Inuzuka barely managed to draw with an already crippled Auto Ninja. A wallflower of a Hyuga decimated by another Hyuga. The stupidest bitch fight I have ever seen between that pinkhead and the blonde girl. An insult to Kunoichi everywhere. The only Konoha genin worthwhile had the misfortune of running into the Cage's eldest daughter, and his Jinchuriki son. Both of whom are so far beyond genin level they shouldn't even be here. Sarutobi nodded, then paused. And what of you? Where do you stand in this whole deal? Naruto smiled and got up, heading for the door. He paused and turned his head, giving the Hokage a foxy smile. Only one of them comes even close to my level. And that is Gaara. But even then, he's only close enough to lick the grime off my boots. He laughed at that before he turned and left the office. One the Anbu, Tora, turned to his leader. Should we follow him, sir? Hiruzen shook his head. Leave him. He is of no concern for us right now. Though do let Jiraiya know he is here. My student has been searching for the boy for some time now. The two nodded before disappearing in a swirl of leaves, leaving the aged Hokage to stare out the window, wondering what the future would hold. Several days later found Naruto and Konan at the hot springs relaxing and enjoying this brief moment of peace. The blue-haired woman sighed in contentment as the younger blonde massaged her shoulders. She was wearing a white bikini, sitting in front of Naruto. She moaned as he worked a particularly tense spot, moaning as she leaned back further into him. Naruto happily worked on his lover's shoulders, heavily enjoying every sound that came from her mouth as he worked over her near miraculously smooth skin. He smiled, tracing a few of the small scars that littered her back, a proof of her time spent as a ninja. He smiled as he rested his head on her shoulder, nuzzling into her neck. You're gorgeous, you know that, right? She sighed, a smile on her face. You always say that. Does it make it any less true? She turned her head and gave him a quick peck on the lips. No. Now get back to working those hands. Naruto chuckled, and the couple settled into a comfortable silence. A while later, the blonde found it harder to control his more basic urges, and the water was getting hotter in more way than one as the couple began to heavily make out. They froze, however, at the sound of a perverted giggle, years of ninja training setting them on edge. Naruto narrowed his eyes at a small hole in the wooden fence. He brought a hand up, a tendril of the steaming water following it like a snake. He flicked a finger towards the hole and the water rushed out and through it. He grinned as they heard a scream. Oh, sweet Kami, it burns, it burrrrnnnsss. Naruto smiled and walked over to the fence, using a chakra-enhanced jump to clear it. He stared at the white-haired form of Jiraiya of the Sannin clutching at his face while giving off a pathetic whimper. Naruto sneered at the man. Stop bitching, fool, the water wasn't that hot. Jiraiya stopped and got up, glaring at the younger ninja. His gaze softened somewhat. So, you were alive after all. Naruto curled his lip in disgust at the so-called legend. No thanks to you. Jiraiya flinched. Look, I may deserve that. May? Okay fine, I deserve it a lot. Sarutobi-sensei called me and told me you were here. But I didn't believe it. Yeah, that's nice. But frankly I don't care. As far as I'm concerned, you and I are nothing. He turned to leave when Jiraiya placed a hand on his shoulder. Look, I shouldn't. But it's your birthright. Your father wanted you to learn his signature jutsu and to sign the Toad contract. Naruto turned and gave him an unbelieving glare. Thanks, but no thanks. I have no need of an inferior contract, and the jutsus of the fourth Hokage don't fit my style. Naruto paused, then shook his head before jumping back over the fence. Come Konan, let's go somewhere else. Somewhere with less trash. The blue-haired angel nodded and got out of the spring. Jiraiya gaped. She looks like. Wait, her name is Konan? Interesting. The rest of month was quiet, with the occasional dodging of the Toad Sennin's attempts at getting closer to the pair. Now, Naruto stood finding himself in the waiting booth at the Chunin exam finals, looking over at the other genin. The proctor, Hayate, stood in the arena, Uchiha Sasuke and Hyuga Neji standing to either side of him. The first fight of the Chunin exam finals, between Uchiha Sasuke and Hyuga Neji. Begin. The swordsman jumped back as the two bolted towards each other. Naruto watched in detached interest as the two went at it. Both leaned towards speed-driven styles, though the Hyuga also incorporated a flexibility that the stiff Uchiha lacked. Sasuke ducked underneath a blow and went for an upward kick, something Naruto noted with amusement he had seen that green-clad boy with the parasitic caterpillars use, only for the Hyuga to sidestep it and send the raven-haired boy flying backwards with a palm thrust to his chest. Sasuke grunted and glared at Neji. He couldn't match the boy in close combat, not without a fully matured Sharingan at least. Without that, the Uchiha interceptor style had far too many exploitable flaws to the flexible Hyuga Juken. If he was to win this fight, it would have to be with ninjutsu. He smirked and flashed through a set of hand signs before calling out the jutsu name. Kaden. Gokakyu no Jutsu. He cried as he spat out a fireball the size of a horse towards the Hyuga. His smirk died as he saw the fireball dispersed by the violent spin of Neji's Kaden. Naruto sighed. Great, we have a fire-breathing monkey versus a ballerina. Is Konoha a ninja village or a circus town? The other foreign genin snickered at that. Well, save for Gaara, but then he doesn't really laugh at anything. Back in the fight, Sasuke narrowed his eyes before calling out another jutsu. Kaden. Hosenka no Jutsu. He growled in frustration as the Hyuga once again swatted his fireballs out of the air with his Kaden. If fire doesn't work, let's see if he likes lightning. He flashed through another set of hand seals, and the sound of 1,000 birds filled the arena. Chidori. He charged at the Hyuga with his lightning-covered fist. In the stands, Maida Guy shot Kakashi a glare that promised pain. The copy nin shrugged on the outside, while on the inside wondering what if it had been a mistake teaching that to his prideful student. Of course, what no one who cared counted on, was Neji spinning, using a chakra-covered fist to swat the Uchiha's charge slightly to side, then sealing all of the Tenketsu points on his back as Sasuke went by, unable to stop his momentum. The Uchiha fell like someone cutting the strings off a puppet. Hayate glanced at the Uchiha and sighed. Winner, Hyuga Neji. A thunderous applause, and some boos from Sasuke's rabid fan club, rang throughout the arena. The next two fights went by quickly with the Sand siblings steamrolling the auto competition, so it came finally to Naruto and Gaara. The two Jinchurikis stood staring at each other, the bloodlust emanating from Gaara freezing everyone in the arena. The proctor uttered a quick begin before leaping as far back as he could. The redhead smiled, a crazed bloodthirsty grin. Mother wants your blood. Naruto, unfazed by the killing intent, smiled and hefted his sword from his back, his cloak swirling around his masked form. Tell the rat it'll get blood. Just not mine. Naruto charged Gaara, swinging Kabikiri down only to have a tendril of sand block it. It continued on like that, Gaara standing there as his sand reared up, blocking and deflecting the storm of sword blows. Gaara smirked and thrust his hand out, and a wave of sand slammed into Naruto, sending the blonde back flying across the arena. Naruto laughed as he wiped the blood trailing from his mouth. Good, this would be boring if you were weak. Gaara snarled and sent a series of sand waves at the blonde who skillfully avoided them all. That continued for a tense several minutes before Gaara drew his sand back to think of another way to attack. Naruto smirked. Time to end this charade. He flung Kibikiri straight up into the air, and then immediately threw up 2 scrolls that spiraled along the path of the ascending blade. As they finished unfurling, just as the sword felt gravity's call again, Naruto smirked. Kai. Torrents of water streamed from the now glowing seals on the scrolls. Sweden. Taiju Suiryuden no Jutsu. Instead of the measly 10 water dragons that had appeared in his fight against Kabuto, over 100 of the bestial heads raged from the geyser of water, slamming into the wide-eyed Gaara. The water dragons forcibly pushed him from the safety of his sand shield and armor, flinging him into the arena wall. To his credit, it took over 90 of the dragons to get best the shield, and all but the last damaging one to take out his armor. Rushing forward, Naruto jumped up, catching the descending blade and brought it down in an overhead strike, leaving a deep bloody slash over Gaara's right eye. Sorry brother, but to eventually build you up, I must first tear you down. Gaara screamed as blood streamed down his face. Even Naruto flinched and took a step back as Gaara's sand rushed back to him. My blood. You'll pay. Sand rushed over, covering Gaara, and swelling to a massive size. Both his siblings and instructor started to panic internally. They could hardly believe the boy Hydra had already incited Gaara to use the full-sized Shukaku transformation. Little did they know Naruto had coated Kibikiri in a minuscule amount of Kyuubi's chakra to incite the rage of the other Biju. The entire arena, seeing the sand demon start to take form, also started to panic, and Sarutobi could see why Naruto wanted this fight last. Beside him, under the guise of the case cage, Orochimaru was considering to order the attack now. But he was too interested in seeing how the legacy of Hanzo would deal with this. Amidst all the screams and general chaos, people paused, noticing how the blonde in the arena wasn't panicking. In fact, he seemed to be laughing, though with mask it was hard to tell. Gaara glared down from Shukaku's forehead, Tanuki Niri no Jutsu. As the redhead fell asleep, a demonic laugh filled the arena. Blood. Ha ha ha, I'm free. Naruto slowly and carefully unclipped his mask, revealing a wide grin on his fanged features. He started to go through a set of hand signs, which many of the older ninjas in the arena recognized, causing them all to tense as he finished. He reached up and bit down hard on his thumb. He slammed it down into the ground with a loud call of Kachiyose no Jutsu. A cloud of smoke, well, if one looked closely it was mist, filled the arena. The crowd tensed, then flinched as a high-pitched wailing roar reverberated across Konoha. A roar that caused every ninja who had ever been near aim to tense up, but most specifically Jiraiya, Orochimaru, and Sarutobi. The color drained from the Gamma Sennin's face. So that's why he called the toads inferior. To be able to summon him of all things. As the mist cleared, a sight that would be forever burned into the minds of all there appeared. The massive beast, as there was no other word to describe, other than monster. Its massive tail splitting into 4 whip-like appendages halfway down its length, its great body littered with scars and glowing blue marks. It looked something like the bastard child of a crocodile, salamander and an iguana. It was easily double the size of the insane sand demon. Orochimaru stood in awe. The blonde boy had just summoned the most powerful summon boss, one that stood amongst the ranks of the Biju in power. Though it is not a Biju itself, just that freakishly powerful, the salamander king of monsters. Gojira. A.N. A.N.D. That's a wrap. How'd y'all like it, Kukuku? Yes, I am in fact a Godzilla fan, and had been wondering for a while now how to deal with the salamander boss. Hope you liked my solution. Couple of things I want to do here. First off, you may notice my comment on chapter 449 of the manga up top. Now I have one on 450. WTF, does Kishimoto like rip-off fanfiction for fun these days? Seriously, Danzo becoming Hokage? There are so many things that make the idea retarded beyond belief. The first and foremost being that the Hokage should be, at the very least, close to being the strongest ninja in the village. I wanna see the fucking cripple pull that off. I mean god damn. Oh, and Sasuke continues his pity, bitch quest. Sasuke. The most arrogant character I have come across in manga. He says to Madara, if you think I'm just some stupid kid ruled by his emotions, then so be it. Saying I should follow in Itachi's footsteps is nothing but pretty words. It's nonsense meant for those who don't know hatred. If anyone wants to deny my way of living, I'll kill everyone they cared about. Maybe then they'll understand a little of my hatred. Brace yourself, Imosuke, you're just a stupid kid ruled by his emotions, and I swear unless Naruto finally grows a pair and kills you I will deem the series a failure and stick to the FF world. Bah, enough of that. Since you guys have been such a great group of readers, I'm throwing in this bonus short story and original work of mine. It's just a quick little 1K word one-shot. The first in a series of 4. If you like it, review on it and tell me if you'd like to see the rest, either in a PM or in the end of another chapter. Roommates. Jace sighed as he plucked a dirty sock from his TV. It was his turn to do laundry. He hated doing laundry. More than slightly thankful his 3 roommates were nowhere to be found, he approached the growing laundry problem as he always did, later. Now that his TV was clear of distractions, he flopped onto the large leather sectional and stretched out, shoving a pair of boxers out of his way. They weren't his, and that was all that really mattered to him at the moment. Fumbling through what seemed like 1,000 different remotes, he triumphantly found the one he wanted and turned the 60-inch LCD TV on. Forgetting what DVD was in, and not really caring, he hit the play button and watched half attentively as a Naruto episode came on. The room fell silent save for TV, and the odd, God, Sasuke is a whiny bitch. Comment from the sole occupant in the room. Peace, however, never lasts long as 2 episodes into the disc the door flung open and a more than slightly hungover Davian stumbled into the room and landed, none too gracefully, onto the floor in front of Jace. The blonde merely raised an eyebrow and looked down at his longtime friend. So, how was last night? Davian moaned, great. Waking up to Viv would have been nicer if I hadn't, been in a horribly vomitous mood. Man, you think she'd never been puked on before the way she screamed. A small smile curved through Jace's face. Maybe if you learned that just because you can drink 2 kegs of beer in a single sitting, doesn't necessarily mean you should. His friend moaned again at the mention of last night's activities. He rolled onto his back and looked at the TV. Hey, where'd my sock go? Jace cupped his forehead. I moved it. Dre, my TV is not, nor has it ever been, a space to store dirty laundry. It was clean. Dude, so not the point. They both fell silent, watching the TV. God, Sasuke is a whiny bitch. Davian said after a few minutes. An hour later, a vaguely pissed-off redhead stormed into the room, and just about dropped his laptop bag, would have too, if it hadn't been strapped to his shoulder. What the hell is going on here? Davian and Jace, without taking their eyes off the screen, said in unison, oh hey, Beck's home. By this point Davian had removed himself from the floor and was laying on the vertical stretch of the sectional. Jace's twin fumed at the mess. Jace. Why are there dirty clothes everywhere? You're supposed to have done laundry. Davian. Beck refused to call him Dre as Jace did. Why the hell do you smell like a distillery, and is that vomit on the carpet? I just had it cleaned. He frantically started gathering the laundry and garbage that had been strewn about the living room. He briefly entered the kitchen to grab a garbage bag and shrieked. How long has the milk been left open in here? Jace snapped his fingers. Damn, I knew I forgot something. Davian sniffed the air. So that's what the smell was. I thought it was just you, man. Davian shrugged. So did I. Several hours later Beck had calmed from his cleaning frenzy and was sitting, or more like slouching, in his favorite leather recliner. A seat no one else used for fear of spilling something on it. Naruto was still playing on the TV, Jace changing the discs every so often. It was in this calm, peaceful moment the 4th and final roommate flung open the door with his usual tenacity. He flipped his long blood-red hair out of his eyes and flashed a toothy grin. Davian's twin, Harold Drake, dressed in half-buttoned-up black silk shirt and black designer jeans with red stitching going up the legs. A silver eagle necklace hung from his well-muscled neck. He worked as a fashion model and was dressed appropriately as such. At least that's what people who didn't know him might think. As soon as he entered his home and was in the company of those he would call friends, the fake personality he put on at the fashion agency dropped. This was duly noted by the opened bag of Cheetos in one hand, the other stained a grainy orange. The same sub-cheese substance stained his stupidly grinning face. Jace motioned hello with a slight wave of his hand, then noticed what he was holding. "Hey H, be careful, Beck just finished Clea." Too late. In a manner all too familiar to the friends, Harold took 2 steps forward and tripped clumsily over his own feet, his Cheetos, face, and hand colliding with what used to be the white carpet that adorned the living room floor. Pushing himself up with one hand, inadvertently grinding Cheeto into the carpet, he wiped his cheese-stained hand on his borderline retardedly expensive silk shirt. That same stupid grin plastered on his face. "Whoa, my bad." Jace and Davian focused on Beck, who sat, twitching uncontrollably. Jace winced in advance. "God damn it H, look at what you just did." In true classic timing, everyone noticed that Harold, who they all referred to simply as H, was wearing mud-covered shoes. In any other situation one might notice the mud's unusual color, and how it mixed with the orange from the Cheetos. This however only served to further drive Jace's twin into mental. Harold scampered as much as someone pushing 7 feet could towards the room he shared with his brother. B almost leapt from his seat, attempting to grab the other redhead before he could. But to no avail. Harold stood on the other end of the doorway. Harold and Davian's room resembled a third-world country war zone, more than an apartment bedroom. Laundry, garbage, food challenging Darwinism littered the place. Not even Beck would enter. Of the 3-bedroom apartment, Jace's room was respectable, your average level of cleanliness. He himself wasn't messy, he just didn't care if others were. Beck's room was more sterile than a hospital. Both had refused to room with either Davian or Harold. Harold smirked and stuck his tongue out as his best friend. Beck stepped from the door, pure repulsion pushed him away from it. But he smiled. One of those, "I know something that's gonna send you into a world of hurt" smiles. "You're gonna have to come out sometime H." He disappeared into the kitchen, once again grabbing his cleaning supplies. Harold gulped and sat in his room. Davian and Jace, having watched this particular scene play out many times. Minor differences here and there but mostly the same, at least 3 times a week. They merely shrugged and turned back to the television. About 2 hours later, Beck had finished his emergency carpet clean, and had settled back into his chair. Jace and Davian had yet to leave the couch. Harold decided now was his best chance to make a break for somewhere. He wasn't quite sure where, but as soon as he got a body length from the door, Beck was in front of him in a flash, fist raised. Harold braced for what he assumed to be the inevitably impact when he heard his longtime friend sigh and plop back into his chair. "Screw it, I'm too tired to be pissed." He half-sighed out. Harold pumped his fist into the air in victory, in the process lightly hitting a light fixture. He pulled his hand back slightly embarrassed and eyed the half-finished bag of Cheetos on the counter. Beck noticed and stared him in the eye. "But I'm not that tired." Harold shrugged sheepishly and sat down on the floor in front of the couch. Quickly becoming engrossed into the show as the rest of them, the 4 longtime friends and brothers sighed with contentment. Then frowned and, in perfect unison, said, "God Sasuke is a whiny bitch." Naruto stared out across the, now broken, stadium, hiding a gleeful smile as citizens and shinobi ran for cover, or in some cases a better view of the match. His sapphire gaze focused on the beast in front of him. He gazed downward, looking into an upturned eye of his faithful summon. "Hello, Jiraiya." The massive summon, really, only truly described as a monster, looked up at its blonde summoner. "Hello Naru-chan. Why have you summoned me this day?" His voice said softly. Well, soft as a 200 or so foot tall behemoth gets. "Shukaku." Naruto replied simply, a vaguely cruel grin working across his features. "After all, it's not every day you get to kick a Biju's ass." "Ah." The Monster King looked out at the now deathly quiet Tanuki. A grin found its way across ancient and battle-scarred features, eventually forming into a confident smirk, which on a giant dragon-like thing, was completely and utterly terrifying. "You are by far my most favored summoner. So many interesting battles." Finally shaken from its reverie, the massive sand Tanuki bellowed out, "Damn you. Damn you. You won't stop me. I will have your blood." Mentally, well, with what little mental faculties the sanity-impaired creature had, it was cursing its bad fortune. Fighting Gojira away from his precious desert was near suicide. But, it wasn't about to roll over and take like a man. Demon, either. It would fight, and its enemies would bleed. Giving out another bestial roar, the Ichibi swelled up, and barfed out a volley of spinning sand shurikens. Gojira flicked his multi-ended tail, driving the four ends into the ground, forcibly ejecting water from the ground in the form of superheated geysers in front of him. The sudden influx of boiling water and steam blew the sand projectiles away. The two kaiju sucked in massive volumes of air and roared. Waves of air pressure and sound tore up the forest between them, splintered trees flying every direction. Watching from a good safe distance away, the Sandaime took the time to reflect on how wise it was an idea not to have the arena in town. Beside him, Orochimaru was missing the perfect opportunity to launch his invasion. He was too drawn in by the spectacle. Both titans circled each other, waiting for the slightest of twitches that would signal the other had dropped his awareness, even in the slightest. "Come and fight, you rat. Or are you as cowardly as you look?" Gojira taunted. "Shut up, you will bleed. Bleed for me." The Ichibi screamed, sucking in another breath, this time blowing out a horde of wind blades. Gojira grinned, gathering what humans would refer to as nature chakra. As he gathered it into his body, massive energy spikes burst forth from his back, a harsh white-blue glow emanating from them. Then he opened his mouth and unleashed what could only be called a giant beam of destruction. The almost white energy tore through the Ichibi's wind blades, blasting off one of the Tanuki's front legs, turning the stump into a chunk of glass. "Arg, it burns. It burns. You will suffer for this." The Ichibi wailed as it flailed about in agony. "Wow, not that I'm disapproving of your methods or anything, but could you tone it down a bit? I need that red-haired kid on him alive," Naruto said, scratching the back of his head. The monster glared at him. "Mention that kind of thing sooner then, will you?" "Hey, sorry." Meanwhile, in the stands, or rather what was left of them, Konan turned to Anko. "If you wish to come with us, we leave now," she said, in that same deadpanned neutral expression her face always held, unless Naruto was around. The snake mistress struggled internally. Now that the time was here, could she really abandon her home? Wouldn't that just validate everything everyone had accused her of? "Hey whore, move it bitch, you're in the way." A random leaf Chunin yelled at Anko as he rushed by. Anko's eyebrow twitched almost imperceptibly. "Right, off we go then." The snake Sanin's jaw was open in awe. "What the fuck? Why the hell does some pissant brag get a massive fire-breathing colossus and all I get is a bitchy snake for a summon? Life just isn't fair." Back with Naruto and Gojira. "So you're saying that you can't immobilize him on your own?" "Hey, I go for total annihilation, not restraint. You've never complained before." The ancient dragon, air salamander, iguana half-breed. "Ya know what? Let's just stick with calling him a dragon," said to its summoner. Naruto shrugged. "This is true. Damn it, I suppose I can restrain it. But," a wicked grin adorned the blonde Jinchuriki's face. "Bring the rain, Jiraiya." The great summon boss snickered, as much as it could anyways, and drove its tails once more into the ground. Geysers erupted, jettisoning water hundreds of feet into the air. Slowly, Naruto's eyes began to change, in particular his right eye lightened to the color of glacial ice, on the thinnest of a slit pupil was visible. Naruto gave a savage grin as he stretched his hands up, reaching out into the cascading torrents of water. Above him 4 massive blocks of ice coalesced from the water. Shukaku watched in morbid fascination as the ice formed, before a tremendous cracking sound was heard, and as shedding a mold the blocks broke away, leaving 4 huge ice lances, almost half the length of each was blade. Steam hissed angrily around them as the soon-to-be ex-Kiri ninja smirked. "Impale him, Shiva." The 4 lances rushed out, each pinning the Ichibi through a limb, holding him to the ground. The sand around each lance was instantly turned into glass, leaving the free yet now captive demon screaming. "It burns. Why is it burning? What have you done, wretch?" Naruto just fingered the mad Tanuki, before taking a running leap over towards the Ichibi's head and Gaara. What he had done was one of his 2 ultimate techniques, part of the Kyuubi gifted or inflicted pseudo-bloodline he had. Shiva, the burning ice. A never-melting ice that burned at temperatures over 300 degrees Celsius. Naruto landed neatly on the thrashing demon, right in front of its red-headed host. The blonde sighed and reared back a chakra-covered fist. "Time to wake, brother," he stated before ramming his fist into Gaara's face. Teal eyes snapped open as the sand demon screamed in rage as it was being sucked back into its prison. Gaara looked shocked as he plummeted to the ground, massive icy towers, and the telltale poof of smoke of a boss summon being dismissed. He looked up, and the blonde boy no older than him as he slammed into the ground. Mumbling out a weak, "How? How did you get this power?" Naruto cocked his head to the side, then gave a soft smile. "My existence is more than just my own. I give everything for my dream, and protecting those it encompasses. Nothing will stop me from it." Ah, the redhead looked back, and stared into the blue sky above him. Is that where strength comes from? Gaara didn't see it but Naruto shrugged. Strength can come from rage and hate, love or peace. But the purest of all strengths comes from the desire to protect, whether it be a dream or those around you. At least, that's what I have noticed. Naruto paused, and stared up into the sky as well. I can show you, brother. I need your help, as you will need mine. All right, Gaara said weakly, wondering for the first time in a long time what the future may hold, with the man who called him brother. I'm telling you, man, I'm gonna kill King one of these days and take his place. My rightful place, as God amongst the clones. And I'm telling you it ain't possible. You kill King, and we all die. But, are you sure? Quite positive. In fact, killing him will cause the immediate destruction of ourselves as well. Bugger. Indeed. Anko and Konan just stood and watched as a pair of Naruto clones rambled on about. Well, Kami knows what. Frankly, the entire experience weirded out the hardened shinobi a little bit too much for their comfort. Somewhere in the back of their minds they mused on how impressive it was that Naruto had the ability to make independently thinking clones. But, still weird. After a good 5-minute rant on the many uses of bacon and ramen, Konan coughed lightly, taking the clones by surprise. You two are here, why? She said, her face blank. One of the clones, the one with dreams of a hostile takeover, sighed and at his head. We are here to guide you through an excessively long series of sewers and caverns, eventually ending up a hidden underground palace. Anko raised an eyebrow. Seriously? The other clone, the sensible one, sighed. No, we're just here to dispel once you get here and let the boss know you're waiting. By now. And with that the pair dissolved into a fine mist. Konan turned to Anko. We shall never speak of what we saw here. Anko stared at the spot the clones had been standing in out of the corner of her eye. Amen to that. Orochimaru sighed as the two monsters disappeared. There goes that invasion plan. However, he could still get his revenge on the sand. He stopped, and paused in his thoughts, glancing around the cage box, Sarutobi being nowhere in sight. He left-eyed twitched, once, then twice. Fuck. Sarutobi had left the cage box as soon as the ice lances had formed, running as fast as his aged bones would take him towards the battle site. He arrived in time to see and hear Naruto's little speech to the fallen Gaara, before the blonde boy leaned down and picked the redhead up, steadying him as Gaara fought off a wave of nausea. No doubt induced by a combination of too much demon chakra, and a fist to the face. Hiruzen took the opportunity to step out of the shadows then, in front of the pair. Hello, Naruto-kun. He had to give the boy credit. If he was surprised to see him, he hid it well. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Hello, Gigi. Can I help you? Internally he was swearing up a storm, wondering if the old man had come to interfere with him. He couldn't take a battle with the Sandame right now. He was still lacking in chakra from his fight with Gaara, and most importantly, while even if he was at the top of his game, he still lacked vital combat experience. The Sandame let out a held-in breath. No, I just wished to see if you were all right, and what exactly you were up to. Naruto looked at Sarutobi, then at Gaara, then back at the Hokage. Leaving, with Gaara. What you see here is what you get. The Hokage sighed. I doubt you're going back to Kiri, are you? Reasonable assumption says I'm not. Naruto snapped back, as if he wasn't staring one of the 5 most dangerous shinobi to live in the face. I just want to give you one last offer of asylum here in Konoha. Hiruzen said, the first trace of weakness entering his voice. Naruto's face softened a bit. Thanks. But no thanks. I have my own goals, my own dreams to pursue. And they do not lie here. He put his free hand up in a calming gesture, not to say I hate this place. I used to know when I was young. But I realized a few years ago. Hate is such an empty emotion, few things are worthy of doing that to yourself. And despite the way this place treated me, Well, I can understand. Sarutobi raised an eyebrow at that. Really? He got a smirk from the blonde, not saying I forgive their attitude or anything though. Or that I'm coming back on a white horse to save these fools anytime soon. No, while I won't shed a tear if this place burns, I ain't gonna be the one that throws the match. The Hokage's shoulders slumped slightly. I suppose that's better than I could have hoped for, all things considered. Naruto nodded sagely. Aye, that it. Now then I must take my leave, if you don't mind. He started walking again, then paused. How odd, I could have sworn there was going to be an invasion around now. Wonder if the old snakehead forgot or something. At any rate, I wish you luck, Gigi, and a long healthy life. Who knows what the future may hold? Naruto laughed, and a small hint of a smile crept onto the old monkey's face. You too, Naruto. You too. And with that they both turned to go their separate ways, well until Naruto whipped around. There is one thing you can do for me. Can ya take Mitarashi Anko off the active shinobi list? I don't really need her marked as a nuke nin as well. Sandame opened his mouth in an unspoken question, then sighed and shook it from his head. All right, Naruto, for you and for her. You both deserve better than this place gave you. A silent nod was all the response given as the two Jinchuriki stalked off into the dense woods. Several days later, in the woods of Fire Country, Naruto, Gaara, Konan and Anko were all walking together in what to most sane people would be an eerie silence. Well, Konan and Gaara were walking in silence. Naruto and Anko were talking animatedly on the benefits of serpentine summons as opposed to something more conventional, like a toad or a monkey. All four stopped suddenly. Moments later a soft chuckling was heard and Ao, a Junin of Kiri, stepped into the path. Naruto sneered at him, his Hydra persona taking full effect. So the Mizukage deigns to send his pet censor after me? I'm honored. Ao leveled a neutral glare at the blonde. Hydra, you have been found guilty of treason against Kirigakure, and are asked to surrender yourself to me. If you come quietly you will be given a fair trial. If you resist, well, lethal force is authorized for use. Hydra snarled, hefting the Kabikiri Hucho from his back. I've seen a fair trial in Kiri before, I'll take my chances with resisting. And with that he launched himself forward, swinging his massive sword in a wide arc. Ao smirked and jumped backwards, throwing a handful of kunai out as he leapt back. Hydra growled, twisting his sword and deflecting a few of the projectiles, leaving 3 to embed themselves in his shoulder. Talk is cheap, little Hydra. Show me what you can do. Ao stopped his backwards retreat, drawing a tanto from behind his back and charging Hydra. The blonde container grunted as he brought Kabikiri in closer, blocking the furious tanto strikes. Using his oversized blade as a makeshift shield. With a shove and a grunt he pushed the older shinobi back a few feet and did a flurry of one-handed hand seals. Beside him 2 Hydro Bunshins popped into life, both wielding copies of Kabikiri. With a manic grin the 3 surged forward, this time putting Ao on the defensive. Ao's lips tightened as he withdrew a second tanto and stepped into a more defensive stance. Using speed and experience against the power and admitted clumsiness of the large Kabikiri. After a few minutes of this he growled in frustration. Enough of these games. He flung a tanto to either side, stabbing both clones through the head, dispelling them, before landing a particularly devastating palm strike, similar to the ones used by Hyuga, right over Hydra's heart. The blonde staggered back, caught by surprise. Those kind of hits, ones generally directly against organs and the chakra system, took a bit longer to heal. Ao smirked, and was about to go in for the kill when he felt a cold blade pressed against the back of his neck. This was followed by the feeling of sand covering his legs, then paper covering his mouth and nose, cutting off his air supply. He turned his head slightly and found himself looking into the cold, unwavering gaze of Konan, and not far behind her, Gaara. He cursed himself for his own stupidity, forgetting about Hydra's companions that easily. Naruto, after gasping for air himself, straightened and walked over to the incapacitated Junin. Forget I had friends? Moron. Naruto sighed and furrowed his brow in thought. We'll let you go. His companions stared at him, shocked. Take a message to your superiors. Leave me alone, and I will leave you alone. I have no issue with Kiri. For now. Ao sighed and nodded slightly. And the paper eased off his mouth. Trying not to look too desperate he greedily and stealthily sucked in a breath of air. Is that all? Naruto shrugged. Yeah. Oh, do tell them that if the Mizukage ever becomes a smoking hot woman with a bloodline and a thing for blondes, tell them I might be willing to come back. He snickered to himself at that, not realizing that would come back to bite him in the ass years down the road. Ao rolled his eyes at the absurdity of that. He would have the irony gods coming back to haunt him down the road. Before he disappeared in a swirl of mist, leaving the four companions there alone. Anko pouted. Why'd you get to have all the fun? Hydra shrugged sheepishly. How about I promise you the next random enemy we face you get to beat the crap out of? She grinned happily. Deal. Now, what were we heading to again? Naruto sighed in exasperation. I told you we're going to go and try to gain a new recruit. Who? Miles away in Konoha. Jiraiya. I want you to go retrieve someone for me. My new successor, Sarutobi said, to the only student of his that still hung around. Jiraiya quirked an eyebrow. Who? Naruto sighed as he stretched in the hotel bed. A small smile forming as he hugged the form of the blue-haired woman next to him closer. This of course was followed by his body tensing up as another arm draped across his chest from the other side. Turning his head he followed the arm to the purple-haired woman it belonged to, also curled into his side. Brief thoughts of panic entered his mind. The hormones kicked in and he realized he didn't care. Without another thought he closed his eyes again and went back to sleep, pulling both women closer to him. Several hours later found the trio meeting Gaara in the tea house across the street. Naruto smiled as he came up to Gaara. Hey man, how did you make out last night? Gaara, who was still not over the whole sleep deprivation thing, had stayed in a separate hotel room watching movies during the night. Specifically the entire Princess Gale collection. Apparently the redhead was a huge fan, who knew? Well, attempted to watch them anyways. The redhead fixed the trio with a cold stare. You are all very loud. All three of his traveling companions blushed heavily and looked anywhere but him. I had to use my sand to soundproof your room as you were upsetting the other guests. It was possible for a human face to get redder, and though Naruto would probably never know it, he was channeling his mother more than ever at that moment. Unfortunately for me, as I am connected to my sand, I still heard everything. He ed his head at Anko. I did not know human vocal cords could reach that pitch. He turned to Konan, and you apparently are far more flexible than should be possible for the human body. Konan buried her face in her hands while Anko examined her hands and sandals. Naruto scratched the back of his head, red as tomato. Hey, yeah, sorry about that. Gaara gave a shrug of indifference. It is of no bother now. However, I believe social convention requires me to give you a high five and tell you that you are the man. Naruto palmed his face. Oh sweet Kami. Itachi, why are we headed to Konoha anyways? The Itachi in question, Uchiha Itachi, resisted strangling his partner for the 10th time that morning. Because our target was last spotted at the Chunin exams, and they were recently held in Konoha. It's our best bet at locating him. The duo were currently sitting in a nice tea shop, in a small town a few days between Konoha and Tanzaku Gai. It wasn't too bad of a town, but Itachi was in an extraordinarily cranky mood this particular day. Some jackass in the room above his and been loud in their couplings the previous night, and an Uchiha without their beauty sleep is a cranky Uchiha, as opposed to their normal perpetual state of wine. Normally, a smart person would simply leave said cranky Uchiha alone, especially if their most notable act was killing everything they ever loved. It can never be said Kisame was a smart person. Truly, him and Naruto would have been great friends in another life. What's he look like anyways? Itachi's left eye twitched almost imperceptibly. Bright blonde hair, tends to wear navy cloaks and clothing. Sometimes wears the old style of AIM respirators. Last known traveling companion is Konan, rumored to be in the company of more now. Bright blonde hair. Yes. Twitch. Navy cloak? Yes. Twitch. And navy clothing? Yes. Twitch twitch. With Konan? Yes. Twitch. And she has blue hair and golden eyes, right? Yes. Fuck, you worked with her for years and you're telling me you fucking forgot what she fucking looks like? Are you goddamn retarded? Is that what that stupid fucking sword is compensating for? Not your sardine-sized penis but your guppy brain. It should be noted that normally Itachi is a nice calm person, but as stated earlier, today was just not his day. Whoa now, Kisame put his hands up in a calming gesture. Calm down man. Calm? Calm? You want fucking calm? I'll give you fucking calm. Itachi quickly progressed through irritation straight to murderous rage, something that all Uchiha are well versed in. Kisame bit out before his partner lit him on fire. With Amaterasu, Itachi paused. Wait, what did you say? Kisame let out a breath he'd been holding. I said, there's someone matching that description right over there, he said, pointing behind the Uchiha. Itachi whirled around, catching sight of the table Naruto and his group were sitting at. Of course, after that outburst they were all staring at him. Sanuva bitch. Naruto, Anko, Konan and Gaara all glanced at each other, then at the fuming Akatsuki ninja standing not 50 feet away. Check please. As the group slapped down some money and dashed out of the shop, Itachi swore, "You are not getting away." And with that exclamation he jumped through the large store front window. Hey, no one can claim he was thinking straight. Shikigami dance. The Uchiha swore as he kawamiri'd with a nearby garbage can, watching it get impaled on a giant paper spear, which then exploded. Hey, he growled out. Didn't these people have any respect for the aesthetic of battle? They were supposed to have a confrontation out in the middle of the street. He would give them a nice chance to come quietly, then the battle would begin. Sabaku Q. Itachi felt sand engulf him. Oh you mother fu. Sabaku Soso. A large explosion erupted, as the sand imploded, resulting in a spray of small chunks of molten glass, which really was quite inconveniencing to those watching the fight, namely Kisame, Naruto and Anko, who had, in an unspoken agreement, decided to see how this fight turned out. After all, quality entertainment like this only comes around so much. Itachi had, of course, swapped with an exploding clone a moment before the sand closed in on him. He straightened up, giving both his opponents a classic Uchiha glare copyright before settling his eyes on the little red-headed terror. All right, he began, smoothing out his Akatsuki cloak. No more Mr. Nice Uchiha. Tsukuyomi, he yelled as his eyes morphed into their Mangekyo form. There was a tense moment of silence as absolutely nothing happened. Gaara tilted his head to side. I'm sorry, was that supposed to do something? Itachi gaped, his prized technique, his favorite genjutsu that he had carefully sculpted into perfection, did absolutely nothing. What the hell? It's an eye-based genjutsu, how the fuck did you avoid it? Gaara nodded to himself. I have a layer of sand covering my whole body, including my eyes. Any sort of direct eye contact genjutsu like that is filtered out by the demonic chakra before it even reaches my eyes. Well fu. Shikigami dance. UCK. Itachi screamed as he dodged a small storm of paper shurikens, which all promptly exploded as they got close to him. This time he did not perfectly escape, he was thrown from the blast, looking worse for wear. Parts of his cloak were burned, and his eyebrows, well, they were singed off, along with a fair length of his hair. My hair, my eyebrows, you bitch. Gaara shrugged. I don't see what's so bad about the look. Itachi snapped. Amaterasu. Konan's eyes widened as black flames surged towards her. Horrible black fire, and being made of paper. Yeah, that didn't mix so well. A split second before paper met fire, Naruto kawamiri'd with her and grinned. Sujin. Burning black flames met frigid black waters. The flames of Amaterasu sputtered and died against the waters of the Mizugami. Itachi couldn't believe it, both of his Mangekyo attacks defeated so soundly. He was so stunned he noticed far too late the black water surged towards him, gathering into a serpentine head. He dodged, but not enough that it didn't soak his arm. He screamed in pain and glanced down. His arm was covered in blisters, and oh did it burn. What? Naruto smirked at the Uchiha. The waters of Sujin are close to absolute zero in terms of temperature. They are the yang to the yin of my burning ice of Shiva. Just a touch, and your arm there is suffering from, oh, I'd say third-degree frostbite. Hurts, doesn't it? The water coiled around its master, the snake-like head seeming following Itachi's every move. Be careful, you might just lose it if it isn't treated soon. Itachi swore, grinding his teeth in pain. He had made a mistake, he had lost his cool, and look where it had gotten him. Not to mention the little blonde bastard was right. Kisame, let's go. The shark man sighed and gave a shrug, whatever you say. With that, the pair both shunshined away. Naruto let out a sigh of relief as the water around him dissipated into the air. Sujin took a lot of chakra, even on his own warped scale. Hell, it would probably kill a normal shinobi. He slumped backwards, falling into Konan. He gave his love a lopsided grin. Well, it's been an exciting morning now, hasn't it? That's all for my now. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments.